Wes Buck Show. It's uncut, it's unfiltered. This is the show of shows. This is the biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred.
Speaking his mind.
I've never had a problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way.
Exploring hot topics.
Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do.
And spreading the gospel of drag racing.
I respect the history. I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. This is the great American motorsport, drag racing.
The Wes Buck Show starts in 3, 2, 1.
Hey gang, Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. It is Wednesday, December 1st, 2021. It's wintertime, basically. It's kind of hard to believe, guys. I want to welcome you all from wherever you're at. I see Warsaw, Poland in the house. Holy cow, Cleveland, Ohio. Guys, seriously, great show. I dare I say it, barn burner for you today. We'll be joined here in just a little bit by the one and only NHRA and Fox personality Brian Lohnes. We will also have NHRA Top Fuel superstar Alex Laughlin join us a little bit after the 3 o'clock hour. But I got to tell you guys, the most important people, without doubt, each and every one of you. Those of you that tune in every Wednesday afternoon, maybe catch us on Monday night, then again on Wednesday afternoon. All of you guys, thank you all so much for being here, being a part of the conversation each and every week. We got a lot to cover, man. It's the week before PRI. We're going to break some news today, at least news for us, stuff I feel good about. I got the boys from the hood, as always, my guys, JT, Hudson, Mike Carpenter. What's up,
man?
I didn't put together like 6,000 topics. I was this close to doing it, and I was going through my notes, scribbling, scratching stuff down, and I go, you know what? Let's just wing it. We got a ton of stuff going on. It's been revved up here lately. Am I right?
It always is, man. It always
is. The week before PRI.
Yeah,
Holy
I always
crap.
forget how crazy the weeks before PRI. Really, once we get to mid-November, Thanksgiving, and then the time between Thanksgiving and PRI. We didn't have this last year. Kind of got a reprieve from it.
Don't you think that that's throwing me off a little bit?
It is.
I think that I'm so far I'm so far
routine.
removed from it right now that I can't hardly. It's hard to go back that far. Like, oh man, I can hardly remember what it's like to be in this moment, this big buildup. Bernie Walls must be headed over to PRI. It is exciting. I do want to remind you all, I've done my due diligence. I hope you have. Click like, click share, click subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit that little bell right next to the subscribe button so you get notified each and every time we pump out some new content or go live. And also, if you're following along on social media, Facebook, make sure you sign up for notifications. Make sure you're following our page. And, of course, share the stream. You're helping us put the message of drag racing in front of more people, and it makes a huge difference. Mark Caruso in the house asking any suggestions on what to do Thursday night at PRI. Do you guys have any
What do you
ideas?
guys think? I don't know, man. I mean, Applebee's or something? What are you thinking?
Oh, I hate Applebee's. Anywhere but there. How about DI After Hours? Right? DI After Hours, powered by Titan Racing Engines. Shout out to my guys, Eric Latino, Chris Clark, the whole gang there at Titan Racing Engines in Denver, North Carolina. Man, I think the party is going to be lit. I do want to remind people, this is, obviously, it's self-serving. Obviously, we're trying to promote the party, but literally go buy tickets. In this world we live in, guys, it's not kick the doors open, come one, come all
it's
anymore.
Gonna be different. It's going to be different this year as far as how
I think those days are behind us. Yeah. I honestly think the days of just throwing these big gatherings and whoever shows up, I think the pandemic has kind of derailed a good bit of that. And so I want to remind everybody, you actually have to have a ticket. So go to dragillustrated.com/tickets and buy a ticket. You have to have a ticket to get into the building. Due to COVID and all these things that are going on in our world, we have to have a ticket and a seat for everyone that comes through the door. So I believe personally it's going to massively improve the experience over as a whole. I think it's going to be a lot different. Sure. And I think a lot better.
Standing outside in a 200 deep line in the snow.
At least 200. I mean, it was crazy. Clear around the block.
Kind of, that's a memory. You know, it's an opportunity to make good memories. But
is it though when it's that cold?
Yeah. You may not have to get your ticket online, come by the booth, and get your early access pass. What's our booth number? You know,
no idea
yet? I think
4452.
4452. That's going to get you in
that's
early.
Wrong. It's real close. Just
look around. If you go to 4452, look around and you'll see us. Come by there, get your early access pass. That's going to get you in early. In addition to already having your ticket,
And they look awesome too.
Yeah, you're going to get a much expedited entry into the event.
That early access deal is paramount. So typically get in line early because we will run out of these things. We run out of them every single year. We've never had a party and not ran out of passes. So if you come by the booth and pick up an early access pass, you'll be entered for a contest. We're going to give something away. I don't even know what all we're giving away. But B, you get into the party an hour earlier. So everybody else is going to have to wait till 9. But if you come by the come by the booth, 4452, JT says, Murder says, you can get an early access badge. They're like collector's items at this point.
I think we're giving away a 1-year subscription to the Wes Buck Show.
Yeah, lock it in. Yeah, you can come watch every Wednesday and we won't charge you anything.
Yeah, maybe we'll give away. You can come on.
Oh, yeah, that would actually be a good idea.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I'm actually for that. I could be totally for that. Literally, like somebody gets, we're going to pick somebody and you get to come hang out on the show with us. And we've got some big news.
While we're talking, scan your PRI
while we're talking about this,
you can hang out with me during the PRI or during the party. And I don't know if you'll make it to the. I don't know if you might.
Yeah, you might end up in the hospital and you might not make it on the show.
I would encourage you not to hang out with JT during the party.
Oh, it's fun. It's fun that night.
Yeah, it's not fun the next day. It's not fun the next day.
I'll show you a video.
It's not night. It goes to the next day.
It does go.
We're talking sun up, eating breakfast. It's one of those deals.
It really is. I want to tell everybody that we've got some crazy news. It's really big for us. I was explaining this to someone this morning that I'm going, maybe it's not the biggest deal in the world to everybody else, but it's certainly a big deal to us. It's something that we're very excited about. The team at PRI, the Performance Racing Industry Trade Show, which, over 1,000 exhibitors. I mean, it really is. They've always advertised it as the 3 biggest days of business and racing. And I believe that to be the case. So many deals are made. So many handshake kind of arrangements are made on the trade show floor at PRI or after hours at our party or various dinners and gatherings and whatnot. But I got to tell you guys, the group at PRI reached out to us and asked us if we would be interested in broadcasting, doing this show right here, live from PRI. So on the PRI headquarters stage, big deal for us. Next Thursday, we're going to push the show back a day. We'll obviously be traveling and doing setup, so we're going to be off of our normal day on Wednesday, but we're going to go live Thursday morning from 10 a.m. to noon, 2 hours. I think we have more time Eastern.
10 a.m. to noon Eastern.
Thursday. 10 a.m. to noon Eastern. I think we have more time on that stage than anybody the whole weekend. We're going to be there, lights, camera, action. We're going to do the show live. We're going to have some great special guests that we're going to announce in the next couple of days. But for us, man, a big moment, right? I mean, it just feels like a big deal that we're going to get to.
Yeah, it's the main the HQ stage, which I don't know if you guys have been to PRI. It kind of is in that area that separates the green hall and the yellow hall. It's kind of like that pass through. So they're going to set up a big stage there. This is going to be awesome. We were debating doing the show from PRI, so this worked out perfectly. And to have it,
I was trying to do it from JW Marriott Lounge.
Yeah, of course.
That's my idea, right?
That's JT's stomping grounds, right?
It
there.
is.
Maybe you can do your own.
It's pretty cool, man.
Maybe you can do your own after hours from.
I'm gonna have lanyards. I'm gonna have lanyards to get in there.
Well, I mean, literally, and I don't know. I didn't even get a chance to tell Mark Beatty this. Mark Beatty from Redline Oil's in the house right now. 2 things. I mean, it's going to be cool to be able to do the show from the PRI trade show floor. What an opportunity. Huge shout out to Dr. Meyer.
10 a.m. to noon, kind of get it kicked off. And,
probably one of the first major happenings of the whole week.
Yeah, after the grand opening breakfast.
I think it's going to be pretty awesome.
8 a.m. We've never made those, but.
Yeah, I've not made the breakfast.
We're more of a grand opening lunch type.
Yeah, grand opening lunch would be fantastic, but it's a huge deal for us. I'm genuinely excited about it. I think everybody here at Drag Illustrated is pretty stoked about it. To have that opportunity to be front and center at an event that draws so many movers and shakers from the racing industry, really, really cool deal, and I'm genuinely excited about it. And I hope we get some of our, longtime viewers and some special guests to come hang out with us a little bit. It should be a lot of fun. We are going to be doing an appearance at the Redline Oil booth. We're also going to be doing an appearance at the Stroud Safety booth. We got a handful of those that are coming together. Of course, we'll be at the Drag Illustrated booth off and on throughout the week. The weekend, excuse me. I hope you guys.
For the Redline and Stroud deal yet?
I think it's 2:30 and 3 on Friday.
Got it. 2:30,
and Mark
2:30 red line, 3:00.
I believe so. I mean, and Mark will probably confirm that here shortly in the comments, but that would be, what is that? I think that's it. I mean, so we have so much going on. We're going to have to get like a Google Drive schedule or a Google schedule.
Yeah, we've got more than that. Obviously, we've got the party Thursday night. Then Friday, we're doing the inaugural, we'll call it, Drag Illustrated Pro Mod Summit.
This is news here, guys.
Big news, breaking news. Wes, I'll let you go into the details, but that's going to be from 11 to noon. Then we roll into lunch, JT's forte. Then
I don't even eat lunch. I don't know.
Then after that, we go 1 o'clock or 1:30. I'm sorry, 30 under 30 press conference in what's the room, Wes, for the 30?
The media center.
Just the media center. Which, if you know where that is at PRI, if you don't, stop by the booth. We'll direct you. 1:30. That's a huge deal. We'll unveil the 30 under 30 cover. We'll actually have that issue of the magazine in all the bins throughout the show. So when you see the bins that say industry magazines that are, loaded with some of the best publications in the industry for free for you to grab, we'll have our brand new issue, the 30 under 30 issue there. And then we'll kind of do a big unveil of the cover, do the press conference, reveal the 30 under 30 list, bestow the jackets upon those young men and women. Then you got the PDRA.
If you see the magazine in the bin, you better grab it, because these parents of these people,
they're going to take
they clean it out.
Yeah,
I mean, they're
absolutely
walking around with the dolly.
We sent thousands of copies, but that's no guarantee that you'll get one. So if you see one, grab one. And then we've got the PDRA press conference. Wes, right after that, 2 o'clock.
Yeah, from 2 to 2:30 is the PDRA press conference, which we have some major news that we're going to break at the PDRA press conference. And of course, we'll be keeping all of you. We know that not everybody goes to PRI, and we'll do our best to keep everybody apprised of all these happenings throughout the course of next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. This is probably my favorite time of year. Like, it's easy to get geeked out during the race season and go into big events, the build up to the US Nationals or the build up to some of these big outlaw races, the Snowbird Nationals that are coming up this weekend, all these things. It's exciting, but I love our industry, and I love all the people in our industry and the movement and the action, and being there and being a part of it is a ton of fun. And I encourage anybody who's never been to any of these trade shows or conventions, if you're connected to the industry, register, go to these trade shows, be a part of the
scene. The more
you
do it, you realize the value of it. I think when I was young, I was like 20 years old. I was like, I don't want to go to that. But now that I'm older, experienced, and been doing this for long enough, you realize the value of it.
Well, it's huge is really what it is, man. I mean, being a part, networking is such a key thing in our industry and in all of life. I mean, it's not that phrase that your net worth is determined or dictated by your network. That didn't just come from nothing, right? Almost all of those one-liners and things like that are rooted in truth. And the fact is that almost all these people you see with big sponsors, all these things that you see on the side, the logos you see on the side of cars, right? The logos you see on the quarter panel of race cars and whatnot, somebody knew somebody. I mean, we actually run into that all the time. I'll have racers call me and be like, hey, I want to go after so-and-so. And the first thing I say to them is like, you need to meet somebody, because calling the 800 number or going onto their website and clicking about us or the contact page, I'm not saying it's impossible,
this is
but
where
that's a tough
because
road.
These companies send their marketing people by and large to these events. So that you're going to be face to face with the decision makers and the people that you need to speak to. So it's invaluable. And if you're a young person, especially that's considering going, go. It's not a boring deal for older people or whatever. Or if you're, if you're into the on track stuff only, definitely this is where you kind of start to move up the ladder.
I think so. I look back to my earliest experiences at PRI, early 2000s, midway through 2000 and 2006, I believe was the first year Drag Illustrated ever, had a booth at PRI. And I remember how important that was. And I always took I always felt strongly about buying a booth because I wanted to contribute. Even early on, we didn't have the money to do it. It wasn't a great investment, to be honest. It wasn't something that we should have been spending our money on because we hardly had any. But I felt like it was important to throw our hat into the ring. I didn't want to be some guy that was just showing up at this trade show trying to extract as much as I could from it. I wanted to be somebody that was there to be part of the scene and contribute. And I wanted to be walking up to potential customers' booths or existing customers' booths and feel good that I'd stroked a check to be here too, right? I had to ship a bunch of stuff in too. I had to do all those hard things that they had to do. And I think it gives you a deeper appreciation. It makes you invested in what's going on there. So I've always been super proud of displaying at PRI, and I hope to do it for as long as our company exists. I love being a part of that scene. I love feeling like an invested member of the community, somebody who's spending money and trying to keep this whole machine going because, hey, that's what it runs on, dollars and cents. I think the PRI show, the whole group, doing a tremendous service for our sport. And I really appreciate the opportunity. And I get frustrated with myself sometimes because we pack so much shit into PRI. Like every time I open my eyes, I'm going, hey, here's another thing we need to do at PRI. But what that does is speak to how big of a deal it is and how unique of an opportunity it is to have everybody there. You got to take advantage of it.
And you get out of it what you put in. So
1,000,000%.
Again, from a media standpoint, from a manufacturer, sponsor, racer, young person, especially, make the investment to go. It really is. I mean,
I genuinely think it's a worthwhile deal. It really is. And speaking of, Mike touched on this, and this is something that I think you're going to see more from Drag Illustrated in 2022 and beyond. We really want to be a galvanizing force in our industry. That's something that we take extremely serious. It seems like there are many forces at work to divide us, right? Whether it's politics or whether it's just the world in general. And we even have parts of our sport that are pretty divisive, right? Groups of our sport that have a little bit of an adversarial relationship. I mean, big tire guys versus radial tire guys, or heads up guys versus bracket racing guys, class racers versus grudge racers, clocks on versus clocks off, the NHRA versus everybody, and vice versa. What we believe at Drag Illustrated is needed in our industry is somebody to come along and really try to bring this group of people together to be a galvanizing force that wants to see, that truly believes what's good for one of us is good for all of us. And we're kind of firing our first arrow, if you will, here at the PRI show with the Drag Illustrated 2022 Pro Mod Summit. We've worked hand in hand with our dear friend John Waldy, who was a part of the Real Pro Mod Association, alongside Danny Rose, Steve Matusik, a group of guys, a group of racers who really did a lot of hard work to get NHRA quarter mile pro mod drag racing to the point that it's at right now. And we believe getting smart people together, a lot of magic things can happen. So we're going to have our first ever Pro Mod Summit Friday morning from 11 a.m. to noon. Everyone is welcome. Anyone who feels invested in the sport of Pro Mod, specifically in the Pro Modified Eliminator, and wants to be a part of its future, being a part of charting that future, we welcome you. You don't have to be an NHRA Pro Mod racer or an NHRA Pro Mod track or whatever to be a part of this. Whether you're a Northeast Outlaw Pro Mod racer or a track owner, whether you're a PDRA, Pro Boost, Pro Nitrous competitor, no matter where you fit in the landscape, a Midwest Drag Racing Series competitor, we want you to come be a part of this. Work with one another to figure out what's best for everybody. We're going to be talking rules. We're going to be talking payouts. We're going to be talking sponsors. We're going to be talking schedules. We have an agenda of topics that we're going to go over. We're going to have multiple opportunities for people to kind of address the crowd, address the room. Mike and I, JT, will be kind of organizing and leading the conversation along with John Waldy, but we've got a lot to cover in a relatively short amount of time. But it really is something that I wish there was more of this type of stuff in the sport of drag racing. And I guess if there's not, we'll do it. Right. Yeah. I mean, completely content with that.
Some details on it. It's in room ICC 211. I don't know what the ICC really means. So it's in room 211 from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And as you said, everyone is welcome. Also, download the PRI app. It's live now. It's been live for about a week. This is an invaluable tool if you're going to the show.
It's a lifesaver.
To follow along, plan your show. If you have a bunch of booths that you're stopping by, it can plan your optimum route through the show, so you're not wasting time. It's also got all your details for these press conferences, celebrity signings, these events like we're talking about with the Drag Illustrated Pro Mod Summit. So download the app, and it'll help you out a lot.
And I just saw Doug Winters, NHRA Pro Mod vet, that's popped in here. He's a perfect candidate for the Pro Mod Summit. We really do want to get a lot of movers and shakers, a lot of decision makers, people, love for fans, love for enthusiasts to be there. But this event is really geared towards bringing people together that are vested, right? That own a race car, own a track, promote a series, put on events. We want to bring this group together to try to, work together for the greater good of pro modified drag racing, right? I mean, we've got some big things. I mean, I think this is common knowledge at this point, but as far as I know, the NHRA Pro Mod Drag Racing Series remains sponsorless headed into 2022. There's not a title rights sponsor. It's something that needs to be discussed. It's something that needs to be talked about. And collaboration, I believe, is a difference maker, right? I mean, what do you guys, I know this stuff happens a lot. If you look in any type of industry, there's a construction, trade show that guys get together. There's media trade shows and media conventions, media summits, influencer summits, advertising sales summits, insurance agent summits. You got to get people together and share ideas.
Barn burner, that one.
Oh yeah, that's super exciting. I've been to one, is why I referenced it.
Wow.
I go to the HR conference with my wife about every year. Yeah. And
that's the one in Vegas, right?
We see your exploits from that.
Yeah, I always feel sorry for her. She has to get up the next day and go to the conference. I do not. Yeah. I did get up and work though while I was there. So
yeah, no, these deals are hugely important. And really, I think, you're talking about the sponsorship for 2022 and everything. I think that, with the rules being released, there's only so much that can happen between December 9th or 10th and the start of the season, but it can get things in motion to get the series headed where everyone wants it to go. I think that, just speaking honestly, I think that is the ultimate goal. And I think that it's a multi-year thing. So it's time to kind of pick this back up, get it going, and get the conversation started so that in future years, we're already ahead of the game.
And they know
what do you think? Go ahead, T.
Just that they're going to know, what everybody's kind of wanting, so when you're having that conversation the next time, it may be too late for this year, but for the next time, then it's already out there, what everybody's expecting.
I wonder, for me, I really feel like the NHRA Pro Mod Drag Racing Series in 2019, prior to the pandemic, really seemed poised for greatness, right? The Real Pro Mod Association had turned the series over to the NHRA. We had 30 some cars in Indy. It seemed like every chassis builder you talked to was building cars or had a waiting list. All these shops that finish cars were packed to the gills. A ton of positive movement. And then between COVID, the travel restrictions, everything else that was going on in the world, rules situations, the Pro Charger combination coming into the class, man, we went from the top of the mountain, the hottest thing in drag racing, to really kind of struggling for participation throughout 2021. And I think it's there. The way the season ended with some of the parity we saw, turbo cars even back in the mix, the Pro Charger combination, the Roots blower, the nitrous cars being competitive, Ricky Smith running, everybody doing things kind of coming back around to where we want to see them. Hopefully this thing can be restored or returned to its former glory. I don't think it's an overnight thing, though. Do you agree?
No, yeah. It's definitely not overnight, but communication. I think communication was lost somewhere along that line. I think after they came back, it seems like just the communication wasn't there, and it feels like the voice of the racers was not heard as much. And so we'll see where it goes. And again, we don't have a dog in that hunt, but our dog really is the sport as a whole and door slammer racing. We're passionate door slammer guys, always will be. So everyone, I think, especially in the comments, always wonders why we harp on NHRA Pro Mod so much. It's kind of the bellwether for the health of door slammer racing as a whole. So we've got to get it where it needs to be. And I think a lot of other dominoes will fall in place.
I agree with Mike. Yeah,
Thanks, write that one down. That's like a press release. Just ready.
Let's be honest, though. Ring up Rick Jones, ring up Jerry Bickle, and ask what's keeping them busy. Right? It's big tire door slammers. these cars, whether they go into Top Sportsman, whether they go into the Grudge world, whether they go to NHRA or PDRA or Northeast Outlaw Pro Mod or Midwest or Carolina, wherever, West Coast, big tire Pro Mod door cars keep so many of these shops rocking and rolling, and they keep a lot of the manufacturers in our industry busy, whether you're building third members or axles or whatever. Most of that equipment, or a large percentage of it, does end up on a door slammer somewhere. Right. And I just think that particular segment of our sport is just such a huge contributor to the overall health and wellness of the whole game.
Yeah. It's the ultimate aspirational class, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's where a lot of these guys want to go in some form. It might be Outlaw 632. It might be Top Sportsman. It might be No Prep Kings. It might be, I mean, there's a lot of variations of fast door slammer racing. So that's really, I
even lump like NHRA Pro Stock and like PDRA Extreme Pro Stock into that group. If you're a hardcore race fan, or like you said, you're part of that, you aspire to be involved in the sport of drag racing, most of the people that I bump into, they want to run a door some way, somehow, whether it's no matter what the level is. It's just, I don't know. It's a unique group of people that has a huge following, and I just want to see it. I want to see it well. I want to see the NHRA Pro Mod series doing well. I'd love to see PDRA and Pro Boost and Pro Nitrous continue to thrive. I think those classes are in really good spots. We may not see you may not see 40 cars in each class, but between those two classes, every event pretty much, I believe, had full fields, really fierce competition. This is a very significant portion of our sport. So when we do harp on it, it comes from a good place, because we know that if this segment of the sport is really healthy, it seems like everything else is.
Yep.
Or at least that's my opinion. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's how I feel about it, man. Let's talk a little bit about this. This was big news, and I'm surprised you weren't. What are your thoughts on this? Shadow being sold, right? Stevie Jackson's legendary door car. And I think did you guys watch that video yesterday?
Did you buy it?
That Stevie Jackson put out?
I bought it.
Did you guys watch that video?
I have not watched it.
I didn't get a chance.
You're supposed to give me the cliff notes, and you didn't.
I watched it, and first and foremost, you forget how dominant that car really was.
And it won Indy, correct? In
yes,
NHRA Pro
it won
Mod
the NHRA US Nationals.
He had to bring it out as a replacement after he crashed the Pro Mod car at some point. So yeah, that it's done everything.
I missed the original Shadow more.
Really?
Yeah, that was kind of hard.
Original Shadow was on the cover of DI about 50 feet in the air.
Yeah, man.
Wrong direction,
vertical. You forget how, I don't know. There aren't a whole lot of cars in the sport of drag racing right now that I think are more iconic than that race car. That's something that we don't see as much of. As much as I love and have always been driving the bus on putting the people first, and we got to put faces to the names and all that stuff, right? You don't see that dedication to a single car or a single body style the way we used to, right? I mean, Mike, your dad comes to mind. 55 Chevy. I mean, he was married to that platform for as long as he drag raced, but to be competitive and to kind of keep up with the ever-changing industry, he eventually had to kind of wave the white flag, dive into a 68 Camaro, and kind of join the masses, so to speak. So when there are these cars that really stand out, I think it is a fun thing to talk about. The Shadow 2.0, we saw it come out, set the whole world on fire at Donald Long's big Lights Out, No Mercy. It was actually No Mercy 7 that I believe they brought that car out.
7?
I think it was. Then he went on to shatter records like all over. When I was watching this video, you forget that car went like 354. Then it went 352. Then it went 350. It went 3.50. You did not. I mean, Stevie actually said that in the video, and you could tell that he was actually a little bit
emotional.
All these racers are, they're humble. They really are. Even Stevie, you don't want to be that guy that says, people, but he kind of came out and said it in the video, man, nobody could really hang with that thing. That thing was a problem. If you saw it in the other lane, you were probably going home. Yeah. And you forget about how much winning actually happened with that car over the years. And I'm anxious to see kind of what the next chapter looks like. Stan Waxberg in the comment, that car was the beginning of the end of RVW. And Stevie actually acknowledges that. He goes, I think that that car ushered in the new era of Radio versus the World, purpose-built cars that were built to run fast on radials, not old Outlaw 10.5 cars or not Pro Mods or whatever, a car specifically built, tailor-made for radial tire racing. And then he actually acknowledged, like, I think we also contributed to the death of the class. We rode it to its height, and we kind of helped usher it out the door.
But that car also ran well on big tires. We just saw it on big tires at the Stampede of Speed, running an undisclosed ET in the grudge race against Bubba Stanton. So was that the last pass for that car? I mean, where did it run?
Does anybody know?
Where did it run since then?
I don't think it's run anywhere else since then.
I was standing like 3 feet from the thing then when it made its last pass. So pretty cool.
And Stevie acknowledged that, how many grudge races the car won. That was a badass hot rod, and it'll be interesting to see like what the next chapter of Stevie's door slammer career looks like, right? Will he have another dedicated kind of grudge car? It's interesting, and I think this is a fun segue.
What was so, I mean, outside of the brain trust that was behind that, it ran Orlando. There we go, Orlando. Yep. So
it did run Orlando.
Yeah. What made that car so dominant? The brain trust behind it, or was there something special that, I mean, maybe we can't talk about it, or maybe even if we know, we can't say it, but as far as the build of the car or what it had technology in it, experimental stuff.
I think a lot of weight percentage type of thing, engine placement more so than anything else, where the engine was at in the car. I'm sure crankshaft, centerline, things like that, stuff that they probably don't want to talk about. But I know that was a lot of the focus, just the percentages and not building the car to be run on big tires, not building it like you would build any, NHRA Pro Mod car, PDRA Pro Boost, Pro Nitrous car. But I do think the brain trust behind it, Phil Schuler, Billy Stockland, that group, I think they're the best, amongst the best, if not the best, when it comes to door slammer drag racing, and their ability to kind of bounce around, change the car. Because, I mean, we saw it with a Roots blower in it. We saw it with a screw blower. We saw it with, it's had a Liberty in it, a Lenco in it. They've made a lot of changes, and every time they did, it accelerated the program. It was never like they took steps backwards. Anytime they brought something new in, it improved the performance of the car. And wow, what a deal.
We don't talk about iconic individual cars that much anymore. Man. We talk about drivers a lot. I mean, but the cars just seem disposable at this point, disposable tools. And a lot of these guys have new ones every year. So kind of a sad moment.
Yeah, it is. I was thinking about that when somebody that was watching the show Monday night, the DI ride along, we were watching No Prep Kings along with Pat Musey and Lizzie Musey. And somebody that was watching commented like, "Hey, Pat, what was your favorite car that you ever drove?" And we never got around to asking him that. But I was thinking about asking it to him, but we didn't get a chance to do it. But I was hoping that he would say like his green 69 Camaro.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? I was hoping that he would say that or that green Firebird. That I loved that car, early 2000s, late 90s Firebird, like a 97, 98
I think
Pontiac
he would say that would probably be second. I could be wrong. Maybe the King Kong car that he drove after that, or maybe even one of his pro stock cars prior to that, but definitely the 69 Camaro.
But you forget, like you said, you just don't think about singular cars that way anymore.
Yeah.
It used to always be. And, I think in some ways we've contributed to that, right? By putting faces on the cover of Drag Illustrated every month and really focusing on these personalities and not getting so caught up in just the specific car and always talking about, I think about almost every car magazine you read, it's a breakdown of a car. It's a 526 cubic inch Brad Anderson Hemi backed by a Lenco. You can hear it right there. We don't do that, right? We are always focused on the personalities, the people that are driving these machines and working on them. And it has kind of given way to, it's also just this influencer world, right?
Yeah.
It's less about what you're riding. It's less about what you're driving. And it's way more about you.
And I think that's
what the Shadow, though. I think, it's because Stevie was driving it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's true.
Personally,
yeah, that's true.
Like, I don't really think that, it was just the car, it's Stevie, the car, him talking trash. He's very confident, and
you're right. That's a good point.
You didn't want to see, not just the Shadow. You don't want to see Stevie driving the Shadow in the other lane.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. And it will not be the same. Like, no matter where that car ends up, it'll never be the same as
Right.
when Stevie was racing it with Phil Schuler standing behind it. Agreed?
Yep. Agreed.
It'll never be the same. So it is a combination of those things. I don't know that you can have one without the other. Honestly, if you think like Tony Christian, another iconic door slammer guy, that 57 Chevy, that Firebird, that wouldn't have been the same if it wasn't Tony Christian driving it, right? The same can be said for Pat Musey. I mean, I think that green 69 Camaro with a nitrous motor in it, like that car was good looking and it had the stance and it had a lot of those things, the kind of Hot Wheels look, but I don't know that it would have been the story that it was or had the following that it did without Pat Musey behind the wheel. And I point to your dad's purple and yellow 55 Chevy. Mike, I think that story's far less interesting without Charles Carpenter behind the wheel because he was verbose and a great storyteller, and it just lent itself to developing the personality of the car. So
What's funny is those cars never made it. It's a crazy story, but all the cars that we've sold suffered a horrific fate very shortly after we sold them.
Didn't that car, the 55 that went overseas, didn't it
the
burn?
original, well, back to the original Mooney 55, my dad never put a scratch on that car. He raced it for like 15 years and never put a scratch on it. And the guy that bought it, I think barrel rolled it in the first burnout that he did in it after he bought it or something like that.
Holy crap.
Yeah, the one we sold over to Holland, it burned to the ground very soon after he bought it. And there's a couple more examples too, but it's pretty wild to think about.
I don't wish bad on anybody, right? And I'm not saying that this is why that happened, but it's almost like the universe doesn't want anybody else to have that car.
It's really weird. It really is. It absolutely is.
I think it's interesting. I really do. Because there's just like Big Chief in the Crow. That's another one. Sean Ellington, Murder Nova. I mean, he's named after his car. All those things, I don't know that they're the same without the person. So it just reiterates how important it is to be that marketable man or woman, or to have the conversations, do the interviews, put yourself out there, because I don't know that the car can't talk for you. Right. I mean, it can, people say it all the time. Oh, we're going to let the scoreboards do the talking for us. And I understand that from a, gamesmanship standpoint or whatever, not wanting to have to talk trash or whatever, try to get in the head of your opponents. But if you look at like brand building exercises, the car can't do it without you. Right. I mean, it takes both of you.
Yep.
It really does. There's no doubt about it. John Force and Castrol, it's another, but that was never about the car. That was more about the brand. Right. I mean, I don't know that I can't hardly even think of any modern iconic funny cars, really. Can you? I mean, I think of like the Castrol Olds Cutlass.
Probably,
I mean, that was a kind of fairly iconic car.
Caps would have to be the one, just because of the consistent sponsor. Seeing the blue and yellow, and that's to your point about Castrol. It's really the colors, because he had a whole Buicks and Oldsmobiles and all these different body styles, but it was always green and red and white. So
right. It was always the Tony Schumacher in the U.S. Army. That's another really good one.
Yeah.
That Kenny Bernstein, even people, I don't think even remember that he had Copart as a sponsor in a blue Top Fuel dragster for a while, right? I don't know that they remember that he raced a black nitro funny car with sponsored by Monster Energy Drink, because anybody who thinks about Kenny Bernstein, you're immediately thinking the king of beers, right? You're thinking Budweiser. You're thinking a red funny car, a red Top Fuel dragster. So it's weird how those things happen over time. I think there's a lot to learn from every single one of those. I mean, there are likely things that we can be. Lyle Barnett, I just got to thinking about that a little bit. He kind of he has this big success behind the wheel of the red twin turbo Corvette twin turbo Camaro in NHRA Pro Mod. Earlier this year, he was driving a black Pro Charged Camaro. This weekend at the Snowbird Nationals, he's in a red Pro Charged Mustang. Yep. But I think the car that he's best known for driving is Beer Money.
Yep.
Right.
A beater Ford Mustang with like a junkyard LS in it, right?
I think some of it too is just the money coming into the sport. I think back in the day, guys raced cars for 20 years and they made improvements to them along the way, but it was still the same car. So people got attached to those cars and they named them. That was another big thing. Someone mentioned that in the comments. The No Prep Kings cars are named. And I think that's a key thing. PDRA even made a push for that a couple of years ago, if you remember.
Do you think that's a difference maker?
Well, I do. If they really attach themselves to it. The PDRA deal, it's like it was an awesome effort, and they kind of made everyone do it. But then like a year or two later, it was gone. Like it was really like pulling teeth to get these guys.
And there was
to
only
name
a
these
few of them that
cars.
really stuck, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Jay Cox, that has worked. The pumpkin,
But it was the pumpkin before they even.
Yes,
it was organic. You know, it was before they mandated that they had to name them.
I think Tommy Franklin's car was called the Jungle Rat before it was fashionable.
Yeah.
Right.
So really, the ones before, you can't mandate it. It's got to be natural, I guess you could say. So it's to me, these guys, because there's so much money in the sport, and especially the top levels, it's just like, hey, we crashed that car, or hey, that Pro Charger combination is not working. We need to roll this,
switch to the
this turbo car out, and it's just so interchangeable. It's something we've had to adapt to, but it does take away from some of the emotional response you get to these cars.
Guys, I want to remind everybody real quick, JT, I'm going to throw it to Solo here. I want to remind everybody that each and every episode of the Wes Buck Show is brought to you by our friends at Stroud Safety. Stroud Safety is known for their top quality racing safety equipment, from drag chutes and seatbelts to fire suits, gloves, and blankets, all 100% made in America. Log on to StroudSafety.com and tell them your friends at the Wes Buck Show sent you. Guys, I would love to hear from everybody in the comments, because this is a fun thing to talk about. We always like to play King for a day. Let us know what you think. Do you think cars need to have names? Do you miss that? Do you feel it's a bygone era? Because I believe, to Mike's point, we're kind of in a world now where every year someone's rolling out a new car. Every year you're rolling out the new latest and greatest RJ car, the new latest and greatest Bickle car, and we don't get to see people, like Mike was saying, tinker with the same old hot rod for a decade.
I think that's what it is, the competition level. I mean, like, and if you're not rolling out a new car or going with the latest, greatest, you're left behind. You know, it jumps so much each year now compared to, back then when
that's 100% of it.
Yep.
There's really hardly anything else to say besides that. The level of competition and how cutthroat it is.
We heard Doug Winters talking about
technology, and has moved that along a lot too. When these guys, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in the 90s and 80s and 70s, funny car stuff, these guys were innovating as they went. They were learning as they went. Also, a lot of homemade stuff. Now it's just like, so-and-so's rolling out the latest and greatest deal off the shelf, and you got to have it. Everyone else is going to have it.
Dude, I was just watching.
Are you going to build your own deal and fight that uphill battle, or are you going to go just get the deal that everybody else has? I mean,
like, literally just watching the Snowbirds watching testing from this weekend's fast approaching. It's upon us, man. The 50,000 to win 50th annual Snowbird Nationals down in Bradenton Motorsports Park. We had our buddy Victor Alvarez, the owner of the track, promoter of the event, on here, I believe, just last week. Was it? Yeah, last week, talking about this race. I was watching some of the testing highlights from our buddy Kyle Christ at Straight Line Media, and just kind of to speak to how far this whole deal has come. It wasn't that long ago that a 360 something was like shot heard round the world worthy. I mean, that's a stout lick, but I was watching testing, and it's like Ken Cartuccio 366, effortless, literally looked effortless. The car didn't wiggle. It didn't do anything but truck right down Broadway, click off a 366 at 205 and change. Chris Thorne, talk about bringing out different cars. I mean, this was a guy that was one of the last kind of holdouts of turbo cars, twin turbo pro mods, brings out the new Pro Charge Camaro, clicks off a 367. Melanie Salemi representing for the screw type superchargers. 369. Todd Tutterow goes 67 at 209. Brandon Snyder 375. Jay Cox 366. Halsey 365. I mean, isn't it crazy to think about all those cars?
What's the weather? Do we have any idea? Like, what's
I don't
know
what it is off the top
or the temperature. Somebody, I'm sure somebody in the comments has got like a weather station down there, and will hook us up. What
was the times that Tyler Crossnow was saying we're going to see?
He predicting a 359 number one, right? 358 or 359 number one, and he was predicting a 366 as the bump. Which that's salty.
Yeah, that's super salty. Yeah, 72, like Big Country said, is my pick. But I mean, all those cars, it's crazy. You've got to run mid 60s to even just go rounds.
It looks to me like the weather right now, guys, I'm pulling up Air Density Online. For those of you that don't know, airdensityonline.com, fantastic resource for drag racers. Check out the weather. It's 76 right now down there, 48% humidity. Air density, altitude 1,359 feet. And I'm sure, I mean, hey, they're going to be flying in that, but it's only going to continue to fall. Holy crap, man. It's going to be interesting.
You don't want it like negative or
No.
it's zero, especially. I mean, especially if it's you said 76 degrees and they get a little bit of heat in the track to where the track can retain a little bit of warmth as the sun sets and into the night, and then have the DA be a few hundred feet. That's where all the magic happens.
I'm excited to see it. I do think that I think 366 is salty. I don't know if that. I don't think that a bump. I'm more with you, Mike. That low 370 range. There's just so many cars that which is hard to believe if you really think about it. I saw somebody say in the comment, you got top sportsman cars running these kind of numbers, and that's a fact, man. PDRA elite top sportsman.
That's like a vibe now. Is the top sportsman car that could qualify number 3 in Pro Nitrous or whatever.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm like that's a flex. That's the new flex.
It is a big time flex. What do you think is stopping? What do we got to do as a sport, or what does the PDRA have to do, or in any sanction or series? What do you have to do to get those guys to graduate up? It does seem like we're seeing more of that than we've ever seen before, and I think part of it. It's tough because
paying more is really the only thing I can think of.
It's the only thing that I can really think of, especially in the PDRA where all the racers get treated so well, which is a great thing. I mean, no matter whether you're racing junior dragster or you're running PDRA Pro Boost, you get treated like a pro level racer at PDRA events, which is fantastic. But I do think there's two edges to that sword, because if you want to get treated like the pros, like an NHRA, you got to be a pro. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to treat stock eliminator racers. You're not going to get treated the same way. Not that they're getting treated badly, but you're not going to kind of have the carte blanche kind of treatment that John Force gets, right? Or Ron Capps gets. You're not going to get that. So there's something that entices those people to move up the ladder. And I don't know that really exists in the PDRA, because everybody gets treated like $1 million.
Everybody's got kind of a different game plan or objective. I think those people that we're talking about that go and run those crazy numbers, they've got that thing dialed in, and they could push it a little harder if they wanted to, but they don't want to. The car's quick, and that's where they want it, and they know they don't have to, because in Pro Nitrous or Pro Boost, you go run a 369. Well, what are you trying to do the next one? I'm trying to run a 67. What are you trying to run the next one? I'm trying to run a 65. Now I'm trying to go 63, and it's this this never-ending quest. Whereas these top sportsman cars, they're like, hey man, set it and forget it. I got this thing running 369 on rails, and I don't have to worry about it, and I'm not going to tear my shit up, and all those factors go into it. So I think that it's not about the money. And the PDRA deal, you go over those top sportsman pits, they've got just as nice a rigs, nicer in a lot of cases.
You want to feel bad about yourself? Yeah. Walk through the staging lanes during a PDRA race with like top sportsmen in the lanes. Like, every car is perfect.
Yeah, they
are. I mean, every car is so nice. The latest, greatest, killer, carbon bodied pro mod. And you're going, this is sportsman racing in 2021.
It really is. It's always kind of been that way. If you go to these $1 million races, those rigs are there with these crazy dragsters that win these races. But when they're kind of put on the same display, where you've got the top sportsman guys running just ahead of the Pro Nitrous cars, and you see the comparison, it's like laid out in front of you. I think that's where you start to go, what's happening here, and why?
Well, I think it's like the maintenance program, right? Because a lot of the sportsman racers, you'll talk to a top sportsman guy, and they'll be quick to tell you like, hey man, we haven't even had this thing out of the car this year. We worked on, we put the motor in the car at the beginning of the season. We'll freshen it up this winter, but we never lean on it. We never have to turn on that other kid, or we never have to get aggressive with the tune-up. And I have to admit that that's obviously a pretty attractive thing.
And the truth of the whole deal, I mean, across the board, all of this racing has gotten more durable. I mean, you used to have to, in the old days, we had to pull the heads off these nitrous motors every 2 passes. That was quarter mile. And those, this was before billet, everything. It's a whole different deal now, but there is still, I mean, for Jim Halsey to run the numbers that he runs and to win the championships that he's won, he's got a boatload of motors in that trailer. So does Tommy Franklin. So does Jay Cox. So does all the top hitters. So maybe you could go run 369 Top Sportsman with the same motor all year. And so that's maybe the breaking point, because these motors are $100,000 each and up. So,
yeah, there's no doubt about it. Ladies and gentlemen, I do want to remind you all to support the companies that support us, like Redline Synthetic Oils. Let me take a minute to remind you all that Redline, our newest sponsor here, Redline has a reputation with racers and hardcore enthusiasts for creating products that perform and protect better than any on the market. And they've been doing it since 1979. Whether it's your race car, your tow rig, your motorcycle, or your lawnmower, when you think about lubricants, you need to think about our friends at Redline Oils. For more information, log on to redlineoil.com. Guys, we've got a big guest in the house. This is a big moment. I'm super excited about this, and I haven't really okayed this with him, but I think I'm going to keep him on here as long as he'll stay. I think we're going to bring on our old buddy, someone who's been a longtime FODI, friend of Drag Illustrated. That's, in case you don't know what that means, FODI. Longtime FODI, and get him to hang out with us maybe for the rest of the afternoon. Maybe we can get him to pop a cocktail with us in an hour or so. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, the voice, I believe, of the NHRA, especially its on Fox broadcast, the one and only Brian Lohnes. What's up, big dog?
Hey, everybody. How you guys doing? Everybody
what's
good?
up, man?
Man, we're great now that you're here, man.
Yeah.
Everybody click like, click share. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you
knows what
click
they're doing.
subscribe. Yeah, man, I'm glad we finally got somebody here who knows what the hell they're talking about. We were just talking about iconic cars, Brian, and this would be a great conversation for you. So we were talking a little bit about how, in some regards, it feels like that ship has sailed, like the car that you're married to, the car that everybody knows you for. Because here in 2021, you pretty much got to roll out a new hot rod every year to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. And I'm just curious, A, what do you make of that? Do you think that we're right that those days are kind of behind us as far as being married to a certain car or being known for a certain type of car?
Yeah, I think so. I think even if you go back into like stock car racing, you go back and some of those chassis, those guys would build a chassis and it would end up racing for 10 years with all these different bodies and stuff on it, you know? So I think in our sport, it has become such a treadmill because, you know, whether it's for rules changing or whether it's because people find a more advantageous combination, or it's because parts and pieces evolve and change that people want to stay up, you know, as best they can to the front of the pack. So, you know, I think I look at a guy like Chad Opleski, and that's why you got to love a guy like him with that 66 Chevelle. Like that's a signature car. That was when that thing went 398 the first time down in Bradenton after they've been trying to do it for years. It was a great thing to see. And that's one of the things I think you lose when you lose this kind of association with a driver in a particular car, because you follow not only the guy in the car, but you follow that incremental success they have. And you know, listen, it would have been cool to see Chad Opleski go 398 in anything, but to see him do it in that car, and the fact that he stuck with it for so long is what made that, you know, that particular moment so special. And
speaking of Chads that stick to cars, Chad Henderson comes to mind.
Yeah.
Right? The Buick Grand National turned nitrous, you know, hot rod. That car, I mean, you couldn't really go to Valdosta or any big drag radial race and not like seek that hot rod out. It was like a super well-kept car, but it was just, you appreciated that he was fighting an uphill battle. You know, he was fighting, you know, he was doing it the hard way. It was kind of that comp eliminator approach. Every time I see somebody doing something like really unique, I immediately think of some odd combination of V8 cut in half or whatever in a dragster and comp eliminator. But it is kind of an interesting thing, and I do miss it, because I think that, to your point, Brian, Chad Opleski, that 66 Chevelle, it connected with all these people that had that car or had a car like that when they were in high school, and it
seems to me like the reward for doing something like that is no longer there. You used to kind of do both. You used to could stick with a combination, have the reward of fighting the good fight in the uphill battle and building the fan base around that car, and have some success and win some races and championships. Now it's like you have to pick one or the other, because you're not going to be able to do both.
I think the speed of technological advancement during that golden period for this that we're talking about was incremental enough that you never really fell that far behind. It would take you years to fall that far behind if you stuck with something that was, you know, maybe less than ideal. You're able to stay competitive. But now, you know, from the beginning to the end of one season, you know, you watch what happens. Now, this is more, of course, related to, you know, to more, you know, small tire style racing or whatever, but it's like you watched how how quick people go at the end of the year versus the beginning, and you can almost understand why everybody's flipping these cars over to do something else. But yeah, it is cool. I mean, Larry Larson's a guy, obviously that 66 Nova or 67 Nova for him is like his great signature car. And they built the truck, and the truck is great. And the truck broke the big barriers as far as street cars go and everything else. But nobody's going to look you in the eye and tell you that the truck is cooler than the Nova with a Lenko in it and the twin turbos that spit fire out of them and everything. No one's going to make that argument, right?
Well, let's do this. This will be fun because I love the fun stuff. And I'm going to bring Mike. I want to bring Mike back for this. Let's do a Mount Rushmore of iconic drag racing vehicles, right? We love Mount Rushmore conversations here on the show, Brian.
Okay. We get comments.
We get shit stirred up in a
nominations
hurry.
in here.
Yeah,
we've
get
already
shit
got some
stirred
good
up in a hurry.
Okay.
So Mount Rushmore of iconic door slammers. Let's do door slammers because if we go funny car and Top Fuel, it's going to go, gas or there's a lot of iconic cars. But let's focus on door cars, and I'm kind of thinking like 1985 on something like that. You know what I mean? Like kind of the pro mod era on. Sure. Let's go around the room a little bit and throw some out. Brian, I'm just going to throw it to you. What do you think?
I think if we're going to stir stuff up, I'll dip an oar in right now and say, Jerry Ekman, the Pennzoil Pontiac.
Oh, wow.
The yellow Pennzoil Pontiac.
I have a hero card from that. I got it signed, I think in Topeka, the Heartland Nationals or whatever, one year. Jerry Ekman signed a hero card of the Pennzoil Firebird. I've still got it, man. Still got it. I'll have to bring it in and show it because it felt like a keepsake. But that's a complete, and this is a reminder to everybody watching, you don't have to just like win 75 races to get on the Mount Rushmore. Right. I mean, Jerry Ekman, this may not be the way you want to do it, but by God, he got it done. That's a great one.
Animal Jim. How about Animal Jim, Mammoth Mercury? Yeah. I
think Animal Jim doesn't get another guy that really doesn't get the credit that he deserves for a multitude of reasons. The promotional aspect, the name on the door. I mean, not that all of those things were necessarily revolutionary ideas, but man, he lived it. I mean, he put on the act. He was almost always in character. It really wasn't in character. It was just a kind of amplified version of who he really was. But that's a great one. Here's one in the comments that I would have totally skipped, to be honest, but I bet each of us have the model car, Ricky Smith's STP Firebird.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. When you said the Jerry Ekman car, the Ricky Smith STP car came to mind too. They were such good looking cars, and they just had the branding between Pennzoil and STP. I mean, they were on point.
Yeah, a third gen F body on huge tires. There's nothing better looking in the world.
It's hard to screw that up, right?
There's a guy named Greg Hare that races Supergas on the West Coast, and he has a gold, 87 Camaro that has a nice silver rocker. I mean, the thing is, it looks like it just got plucked off the pages of your favorite drag racing magazine circa 1987. And I freak out over this thing every time I see it. And I ran into him at the Jegs All-Stars dinner this year, and he's like, man, I got to thank you. He's like, my friends at home tell me that you just go nuts every time my car comes up. I'm like, dude, it's perfect. Everything about it's perfect. Yeah.
I love that, man. Tucci always goes nuts about anytime he sees an Olds Cutlass because he knows how I feel about Oldsmobile Cutlasses. Without question, the greatest body style of all time. And I'm going to throw a car out here that didn't necessarily dominate, but Larry Morgan's purple Castrol super clean Olds Cutlass.
Yeah.
That car to me, if I think back to that era of pro stock, you can't not think about that car. I mean, it was just one of the cars that to me made a difference. I mean, it was a Don Ness built race car. And at that point in time, Larry's kind of back in, the mid 90s shape. If you remember, he lost some weight there in the early 2000s, I believe it was. He lost some weight and he was trying to, get down to where they didn't have to, they weren't having to build a car that was super lightweight. But that car was built by Don Ness, God rest his soul, one of the best chassis builders, most innovative minds our sport's ever known. That car had a titanium rear end housing, guys. Yeah. It had titanium axles, titanium lug nuts, titanium everything, steering. And before this type of thing was fashionable, I mean, obviously it's kind of commonplace these days, but I mean, it had titanium wheelie bars, titanium chute mount, everything on the car that could be made out of titanium was titanium. Daryl Jackson, Bob Rieger's 57 Chevy. How about the S10? I think the S10 would actually be more fitting for Mount Rushmore than the 57.
I'm gonna do an early nitrous Mount Rushmore. So
Ooh, okay, let's
I think
do that.
you gotta go Rob Vandergriff 57 Chevy.
Yep.
Yeah, hard to beat.
You gotta go Charles Carpenter 55 Chevy.
Yep.
You're gonna make me say it.
Yep. Wisner, Norm's
Yeah.
car.
Norm, the jukebox Ford.
Yep.
And Christine. I think those 4 cars. I mean, you could put Bill Coleman in there.
I was going to say
obviously
Coleman.
there, but I think that his cars were late model cars always, but he had Greatland cars, obviously setting records, winning races and championships. But those 4 cars were just all unique in their own way and kind of set that shoebox nostalgia craze ablaze. And then on top of that, I'm going to have to say too, later, you can't forget Barney. Shannon Jenkins in the Willies, the Barney Willies, and also pretty much any Scotty Cannon car. Yeah, I mean, how are you going to choose one of those?
Well, and then you can go down the road of Musey and Popeye, Annette Summer and Pink, and then Linwood Woods GTO that Randy Adler drove. That thing was freaking awesome.
Man, there was
Wayne Spazanek's Willies. Remember the Wayne Spazanek's original Willies that was just all rake and it was sitting down on the ground. They did a great photo shoot, I think, with Hot Rod Magazine of that car, and they had it just kind of sitting, crossways on the racetrack. But it was just
how about Shannon Jenkins Iceman 68 Camaro alongside Mike Castellana's Western Beef 68 Camaro, right? Like those 2 cars, like the paint jobs kind of worked. They were different colors, obviously, but those cars to me were iconic. I think
an underrated car was the Tommy Mooney. And then later, Steve Vick 68 Camaro, the red with the yellow and the checkered. That car dominated for about 2 or 3 years in the late 90s and early 2000s, set records. And I think ushered in, it's kind of like finally a change from the 63 Corvettes. I think that ushered in the 68 Camaro and 69 Camaro era.
And then came the Studebakers. That was unique for 5 minutes, and everybody had one of those too.
Yeah, it's crazy that how cool is it? Speaking of just how awesome drag racing is, that we've had this whole conversation and we didn't mention Scotty Cannon and the Killer Red Mater, right? Like that car was, I mean, I still have the t-shirt that I got when I was like 8. I can't fit it. I tried the other day. I can get it over like my one arm goes through the neck hole.
Why'd you even do that to yourself?
Yeah, I was just joking. I was trying to motivate myself to lose some weight for PRI, to be honest.
That's it. You're setting the bar too high there.
Yeah.
We don't want you showing up looking like an 8-year-old boy.
No. I haven't eaten solid food in 12 days, but I'm doing my best. I got online and I saw like 50 Cent did a movie where he just drank like nothing but protein shakes for like 3 months so he could look like he was super sick. So I'm doing that exact program. He looked great, lean,
Listen, Elvis one time, this is a true story. Back in the 70s, Elvis, when he was in the fat Elvis stage, just morbidly obese, just on all the drugs, just totally wiped out. He got some whacked out doctor told him to go on a mango juice diet. So all Elvis consumed for like months was mango juice, but he drank so much mango juice, he got fatter.
That's my favorite Elvis. The last Elvis, he just seems so that's an attainable image that we can all live up to. The early Elvis, I'm like, we can't keep up with this.
Oh, yeah. If you see him in any of those
Later
movies,
Elvis, you could see him at any family reunion.
Coolest human being alive, like at the height of it. But I watched some of his last concerts, and Homeboy was in it. It's hard to watch. Forgetting words, just stopping singing, karate chopping shit randomly.
The Westgate Hotel, that was the old Las Vegas Hilton. He had the whole top floor of that. That was his. The entire top floor of that hotel was his, and he would occasionally go to the windows and shoot an AK-47 out of the windows just for entertainment purposes in the 1970s. So good times.
It was killing it, man. Yeah, it's
also a car guy. He had a good collection of Cadillacs and Panteras.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever been to Graceland?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. Spectacular. It really is. However, wealth at that time looked so different than wealth now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was so tacky. I love it. I'm like all into it. Like let's just put a whole cheetah on the wall. Like just sheetrock screw it to the wall.
Let's
which
make this
kind of
whole
looks
room
like they did.
A couch.
Yeah.
The entire room.
It's wild. Oh, hey, I'm gonna go back to our car conversation.
Probably good
How
idea.
have we skipped Johnny Rocca? Another car that didn't go set every record or anything like that, but was a super iconic hot rod.
And again,
I want to give
that's a common theme. We're going to say that about a lot of these. Didn't set a lot of records and didn't do this or that, but iconic in so many ways. And that's honestly, I mean, I don't know how we get back.
Daryl Jackson is right here as well. Daryl Jackson Jr. Todd Tetero's blown Mustang, the like 2003-ish body style Mustang that had like a small block with a blower in it at one point. It was a Hemi. That thing had a bunch of different variations. The checkered,
the orange one. The orange
yes,
one. Yeah.
The YO Motorsports car.
He had a red one, a red nitrous one, kind of around that same time as well. Maybe shortly after that. His Willys was badass too.
Oh, you forget all about the orange and purple
Willys.
Yeah. There's been so many incredible cars. Mike Moran's Monte Carlo is another one
even
that really
regionally,
changed
like you run into
the
stuff.
sport.
Regionally, like Terry Hall. I don't know if you guys ever saw Terry Hall. He hand built this thing. It was like a '36 Chevy panel truck called the Hitman. Yep. And I think that car was sold over to Europe when he was done with it. But he also had a Promide. He built. The guy was incredibly talented. He built these bodies himself. But he had a 3 Series BMW that, again, I think sold overseas. But that's the cool thing about the door slammer cars is everybody even. We know some of these cars on a national level, but there were so many regional cars that didn't really travel outside of their, 4, 5, 6 state area that people grew up loving as well.
Yeah, Terry would always be at Epping when we'd roll up for the NHRA race at Epping every year. That car was awesome. Had like a flat gray paint or that like Nardo gray before that was a thing. And then it had the bullet holes painted in it and the guy with the Tommy gun
it was
on
great.
The side. Oh, man, that thing was awesome.
It's kind of amazing. And if you think about how many of these cars there are that let's do this, Brian, being the historian that you are, what are some cars like in recent memory that you really think have changed the course of our sport? Like if we look at Radio versus the World yesterday, big news, Stevie Jackson posted that video on YouTube of the Shadow being sold, Shadow 2.0. He mentioned it in the video, which I think you posted about on Facebook. It was a great video and you almost forget how much winning that car really did. But it did usher in a new era of radial tire racing and in a lot of ways kind of ended high-level radial tire racing. What are some other cars? Are there any off the top of your head that you can point to that have had that kind of impact on a class or a specific eliminator?
In recent times, I think you go back to the funny car category, of course, and when the flip top bodies came in 66, that's a huge, that obviously was a massive change in the game there. I think when we talk about door slammer drag racing, what's funny is, so many cars had a great kind of blip in radial racing. And I don't say that disrespectfully. We look at Tim Slavens when he ran that 364. That was like one of the greatest things of all time that I saw, because it's like, man, this can happen. And really what it was a good fighter landing a good punch and then, getting knocked out the next round. But it was like, Slavin's car, I think, will forever be one that I love, just because it was a sea of pro modified cars at that point. And he rolls up in the stock body Camaro and it's like, how is this ever going to work? And all of a sudden he goes up there and sets a world record. Obviously the Bruder brothers. I mean, I think if we talk about the Bruder brothers Mustang, that is one that has to fall into this category, this discussion we're having, and all the different combinations they ran through it, all the different ways they were able to run up front in X275, all the different ways they were able to just, make John Sears have to chug Maylocks and get yelled at on the internet and everything else. It's, that's a car that, to me, in recent history, certainly falls in the same category. And, I think when we look at a car like Marcus Burt's, that 55 when he set the nitrous record at that time, that was an extension of the Shadow, right? That was Stevie Fast being able to apply knowledge that he had gained in his own program and then use obviously the power of the nitrous engine to do what he wanted to do. So I wouldn't put that car in this category because it is that's more of an evolutionary step. There was nothing overtly innovative or over the top innovative. Now the rear suspension in that car was incredible when the thing would go down a racetrack, and I mean it
looked like a dirt late model or whatever.
And I'm not taking anything away from what those guys did, but in terms of this car changed the game. I think, the Shadow and the Bruder Brothers Mustang, I think, sit in the same category.
Here's one that just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I think this is something that it did a very similar thing to what the Shadow did. And that would be Doug Reister's blue 68 Camaro in pro nitrous competition. That was one of the first like purpose built flyweight cars where, I mean, there was even some stuff on that car that I think was like super questionable. some things, some decisions made that you kind of are looking at it, you're going, I don't know how I feel about this, but it really did bring about this titanium, carbon fiber, lightweight craze that kind of took over ADRL Pro Nitrous and Pro Extreme for many moons. I mean, there was a long time there with the cars, and it was interesting because it kind of compounded this whole thing we're talking about being an issue now, is because the cars became far less durable. I mean, you had guys selling cars because they had just shaken the life out of them or raced the life out of them. Jason Scruggs and Garrett Livingston brought out a slew of lightweight Pro Extreme cars. I don't think Jason's known for any car more so than the legendary 63 Corvette that Rick Jones built for him with the 400-inch small block and the screw blower. But I mean, Jason was always bringing out these super duper lightweight cars. And to be honest, I'm kind of glad that ship sailed, because it feels like it ushered in a more level-headed, if you can call where we're at right now in Pro Mod level-headed, but it did kind of calm that down, because you had guys building largely disposable cars and spending $1 billion.
Yeah, the curve had gone vertical. One that's kind of a little bit out of left field, but I think fits this discussion, Birdman's Pontiac. The old Jimmy Yates Pro Stock car, right? If we're going to talk about a car that had a massive effect on a style of drag racing, that's one of the foundational no prep cars out there.
No
that
question.
Certainly had a step to vault us ahead. And as we talk about these cars that aren't durable, I mean, that was a Jimmy Yates Pro Stock car that had approximately 81 billion runs. 81 billion
roughly
runs out.
Thereabouts 81 billion. And it was, you think about that car. This is where I get excited. And I think earlier in the show, Brian, we spent like a half hour talking about Pro Modified and like its direct impact on our sport, because there's so much trickle down from this particular category that I do think is unique in the sport of drag racing. That's something that we should talk about, because you'd be specifically qualified to talk about it. But one, I want to invite you to this here in front of everybody. We are hosting the first annual Drag Illustrated Pro Mod Summit. It will be Friday at PRI, 11 a.m. to noon in room 211. Okay. And basically we're trying to get people together. Sometimes this can be a challenge, but getting a group of people together that are vested, that have a car, racing NHRA, racing PDRA, racing Northeast Outlaw Pro Mod, Midwest Drag Racing Series, wherever, to come together, share ideas, discuss problems, and try to chart the future of the class, especially in kind of what I feel to be a pivotal moment in quarter mile legal Pro Mod racing history. Yeah. We need some galvanizing force. We need somebody to try to bring this group of people together to plot out the future. And I would love to have you there. And I can't remember what I was going to even say after that. Oh, I was just, don't you love talking in like real time and having people text and getting all these messages or whatever? Yeah. It's unbelievable. But Birdman, going back to that, it's so important. The health of Pro Mod creates that opportunity for Birdman to get that car. Yep. That's so many NHRA Pro Mod cars, so many PDRA Pro Boost and Pro Nitrous cars end up Quick 8 racing, end up at grudge tracks, end up in no prep kings. So it's very important. And I do think the health of pro modified drag racing is kind of a great, barometer for the overall health of the sport of drag racing. So speaking of no prep kings, we've been, I'm curious your take on this, right? You're obviously tied into the NHRA. Sure. You've got a deep involvement there. I don't think you make any bones about it. I believe that you're amongst the most visible people in that whole camp. What do you make of this no prep kings craze? I mean, we've kind of identified that it was this other thing from Street Outlaws for the last few years, but here in 2021, it just feels like it has become far more prominent, far more part of like the drag racing scene. What do you make of that whole world? And are you a fan? What's your take?
Yeah, no, listen, I'm a fan, and I'm a fan for several reasons, but the main one is any series that heads to drag strips and puts people in drag strips and helps them be profitable and to make their bills and pay their mortgage. It's great. The more young kids that go to a drag race and watch cars go down a racetrack and want to go tugging their parents' pant leg and go, can we go back and do this again next weekend? Yes. Or can we go look at something else? I mean, anybody, it's like, I forget, a crew chief told me this 100 years ago, and I asked him a question. He said, if I'm concerned about how fast somebody else's race car is, that means I'm not going to make my car go any faster. So I think if you're, to me in drag racing, it's like, I don't look at no prep kings and think, oh man, like, what does this mean for the rest of us? I think, thank God, this is great. This is, again, anytime I see a packed grandstand, unless there's something really dumb going on, I really don't care what the deal is. I think it's fantastic. Show me healthy racetracks and show me a healthy fan base, and I'll show you a healthy sport. So no, I'm a fan. I think I listened to your interview with Justin Swanstrom recently on the show, and it's a smart guy. Him and his dad I have a lot of respect for them, and I've watched them race for years now, and they don't screw around. They're out there to get a job done, and I mean, he does screw around clearly for following.
Clearly, he's doing a little bit of screwing around, but I agree. We've pointed at him as an example of someone that we feel is really doing it right.
Yeah.
They're taking matters into their own hands. We've been preaching that for a long time, that you can't wait on Brian and the gang from Fox or Tony Pedregon to roll up in your pits and make you famous.
No.
In this day and age, you've got a high definition camera in your pant pocket, and you probably need to bust that thing out and point the lens at yourself.
Yeah.
Take matters into your own hands and connect with people and use every tool that's available to you. And I think Justin is a fantastic example of somebody who's really come out of left field. I mean, if you're a hardcore grudge racing guy, you probably knew who Justin Swanstrom was, Little Country 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. But most people really weren't aware of what these guys were capable of or what his aspirations were. But now I don't know that there are too many hardcore drag racing fans or hardcore drag racers that haven't heard of him or seen some of his exploits on social media or on freaking cable television right now. And to your original point, man, I don't care if people are doing burnouts on the moon, in a school zone, in a cafeteria. I don't care if it's happening on television during primetime TV with millions of people watching. It genuinely feels like a victory to me. Do you feel you're way more connected to like mainstream car culture and the Detroit auto manufacturers than we are here at Drag Illustrated? So I'm just curious, do you feel like car culture as a whole is being kind of reinvigorated right now? We got 700 horsepower Dodge trucks coming out. Everybody's got a hot rod car. Tesla has a hot rod EV. Do you feel like car culture is experiencing a little bit of a renewed energy and enthusiasm across the board?
Yeah, listen, I got two sons that love cars. They love everything about them, and they have different tastes and different interests, but they know everything that's going on with every new model that's coming out. They know a lot of stuff that's going on with obviously different names and different, especially social media influencers in the automotive space. So, I think the car culture thing is interesting because it's a car culture and as well as a generational culture thing, right? You have a lot of people that look at electric vehicles and certainly look at them with their eyes crossed, or they look at them over their shoulder going, oh, this is going to ruin everything. And, I think the guys that were getting rid of their horses probably thought the same thing when they got a Model T.
Yeah.
So everything's going to change, that this is the way it goes. But I think if you look at, all the overriding factors, we are in a really good place right now in terms of what the car culture is in this country. And I know, there are certain battles to fight, big battles to fight. RPM Act is a huge one that I know has been supported by a load of people, myself included. And that's something that is vitally important. Jamie Meyer runs PRI. We'll be talking a lot about PRI, of course, at the show next week. But things like the RPM Act are what we need to follow up on and support in order to protect what we do and help what we do grow. But I do think car culture in and of itself is, listen, there's a brand new Canon camera coming out. Okay, a pro level Canon camera that has an automotive mode. It is like shoot faces, shoot action sports, shoot cars. So that really tells you almost all you need to know of how pervasive the automotive culture is right now. When Canon has designed a mode on their camera using guys like Larry Chen and others to help them dial it in, that tells you how many people are shooting cars and how pervasive automotive culture is in the media.
Hey,
Isn't that interesting?
Does that mean we can just send anybody to photograph the races now and don't have to worry about an actual professional photographer?
I wouldn't go that far. And we had Larry on the stage at SEMA, and we were talking about it. And I asked him that question. I said, so what does this mean for you? And he said, a good photographer is a good photographer. He said, yes, someone's going to be able to hold this button down and then the picture will have more clarity than it would have had before. But is the image any good? Is it composed right? Is it set up right? And so I think, photography is an art in and unto itself, right? But this ability that we now have to either if you're using this thing or this new Canon camera to create some of this stuff is pretty amazing.
I mean, if you get on YouTube, I mean, obviously everybody's For You FYP. That's what my daughter says. She's 7. She goes, Dad, look what's on my FYP. I'm like, what is that? For You page.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
like, oh, okay. So but everybody's For You page is different, right? But I mean, it would appear to me that like 97% of what's on YouTube is cars. Like, I mean, I'm obviously being dramatic, but I can't hardly wrap my head around how much content is being created, not only around drag racing, but just cars in general. My wife, we're in the market for a new vehicle. She's on TikTok watching one of 10,000 TikTokers talk about the new Yukon or the new Kia Telluride. And, there's literally women like jumping in the back seat saying, hey, I'm about the same size as my, 19-year-old son, so he'll fit back here comfortably. Kind of hard to believe there are that many people creating content around this stuff.
Yeah. And speaking of automotive content, Hoonigan, Alex Laughlin, we're going to have him on next. I mean, that's another cool.
Let's bring him on
deal.
now. I was just going to bring him on right now. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Alex Laughlin, NHRA Top Fuel superstar. He's driven everything that I think has wheels on it, some stuff that doesn't. Welcome to the show, Alex. Thanks for being here, dude.
Thanks for having me.
Dude, you have like a legit podcast setup now.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at this.
You sound good.
Well, I ever like doing these every now and then. I don't like being the echoey guy. So
right, yeah, you don't want to be the weak link.
Yeah, you don't want to be the guy that sounds terrible. Especially with all of us pro level rigs, except for Mike. Mike, are you listening on AirPod thingies or talking on them?
No, I'm on a mic. I'm on a.
So you're using
mic.
those for monitoring.
Yeah, this is just this is just for monitoring.
Okay, I was just making sure. Monitoring only.
I couldn't
Alex,
find any headphones to go around my Peyton Manning head.
It would be rough to get over that forehead. Yeah, it's gonna take a minute. But I'm curious. We were just talking about automotive content creating, Alex, and you've been front and center in this game for a while. Why don't you take us through the whole experience real quick of being, I guess, hit up, I'm hoping, by the Hoonigan crew to drag race the Hoonicorn all-wheel drive 1,400 horsepower Mustang. How did this whole thing come to be? And holy crap, what's it been like the last 24, 36, whatever hours now that, I don't know, a few million people have watched you on YouTube?
Well, I'll start out with saying that I hope this all does go well. You may have spoke too soon because my internet out here in the sticks isn't always great. So tell me if I need to hold back or say something again. But I did make all of that out. And I guess it was a little over a year ago, maybe like a year and a half ago, I was watching, some of the Hoonicorn versus the World stuff. And I made a post on social media that was the Corvette alongside the Hoonicorn, and just said, hey man, like whenever y'all are ready for a real drag race, hit me up. And one thing led to another, and here we are a year later, and they did. And they said, we're going to be racing out here in Santa Margarita, California, and this is going down in like 2 weeks. And I was like, cool. This is basically how everything else always goes for me as well. So I couldn't pass it up. I just said, yes, of course, I'll be there, figure it out. And, drug the car out to California. The best part is I had just sold my entire Pro Stock rig and everything. So I didn't even have a trailer. I had to borrow a motorhome and a trailer to put all my stuff in.
So this wasn't, so real quick timeline wise, because I think this is kind of interesting and I'd like to know from my own like personal knowledge. So what's the timeline on something like this? So you get hit up to do this when, I guess the Carusos bought your Pro Stock stuff, 3 months ago?
Right. Something like that.
Yeah.
And it was gone. Well, we had sold the trailer to Aaron Strong, and he had gone ahead and picked the trailer up. And we ran the race like the week before Dallas, NHRA. And so, yeah, went out there, and dude, showing up, it was an absolute just like 50-year-old airport runway.
Yeah, it looked sketchy.
Dirt. Yeah. Oh, it was. I thought we're doomed for sure.
Yeah.
And what's the funniest part of this is it's like, who's in tow? Frankie Taylor. Right.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's just so funny to see him
there. He popped in there at one point. It's almost like he had just had to make his appearance. He just jumped in.
I love Frankie, and people sleep on him as far as a tuner and a crew chief, man. A really sharp guy, his brother Paul. I mean, they're high level operators, that just kind of, I think they play like dumb on TV. They kind of play that kind of character, but super sharp guys. So take us through the whole. I didn't know what to make of the racing itself. I would like to know kind of the timeline. So you filmed this 3 months ago, and it aired just this week. So for those, kind of wondering how these things kind of all get pieced together, it took them 3 months or so, right?
JT, let's get the link in here if we can.
Yeah.
To the video.
Yeah, so we showed up out there, and like I said, it was this old nasty airport runway, and I thought like they don't even have a street sweeper, to like blow the dust off of this thing. But then I thought like, why would they? They have an all-wheel drive car. Absolutely. It's at the end of the day, it's their show. They're supposed to win, right? And I know that we were the day that we got there, they probably ran the car 20 or 30 times. And I'm telling you, I will say that car is an absolute beast. Just hot lap it one after another on the two-step, just da 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 da. I cannot believe that it lived through everything. So whoever actually put that thing together did a heck of a job.
Those things see the rev limiter a lot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you watched any of the Gymkhana deals or what, it's just on the limiter the entire time.
It's incredible.
Yeah. The whole time we were there, the only thing that broke on it, they lost one of the drive shafts, one of the four, only once. But that thing, it's bomb proof. I'm serious. And it's fast, it's faster than it was last year. I hate to say that I was like a little bummed that I didn't get to race Ken, because I've been a fan of him for so long. But he was still out there, and I got to race the Unicorn, and his girl Leah, she's killing it. She's extremely talented, and I've said it 100 times. She has a very bright future ahead of her, as long as she wants to do something in motorsports. But yeah, man, we got out there and we finally got a test run, and it just spun the tire instantly. And on the second test run, it did the exact same thing. And I thought we were in big trouble, and I was like, we're going to make absolute fools of ourselves. There was the Street Outlaws thing years ago that was horrible. And I'm like,
which you're still trying to live down.
Yeah.
Right? You're still trying to it's so
and
crazy.
I'm thinking like, I've made a mistake, I shouldn't be here. Oh man. But we ended up
made a mistake.
We ended up going to Dick's Sport Goods, and we bought a bunch of weight. Because again, I didn't have my trailer, and that was one thing that didn't make it into the swap. And so we go and buy this weight to bolt in the back of the car, and our next test pass was race number 1.
Wow.
And she jumped. Thank goodness, because I thought, all right, well, at least one of the races that I lost was just by default, so this is helping my case. Oh, and then they allowed me to use a traction compounded pimp juice for the second race, and it actually worked. I've never used that stuff before, and it actually works. It helped a ton. And we outran her. It was the craziest thing. I was so pumped. So at that point, I didn't care what happened. We had achieved more than what I ever thought we were going to at that point. And so that's why I agreed to the 1,000-foot race. I knew that I'd be handing it over, but they like racing to 1,000-foot. I didn't want anybody on social media saying, like, oh, you only did 500-foot, yada, yada. Like, all right, well, let's do it. And right at 500-foot, there is a nasty bump in the runway, and the car started spinning and sliding all over the place. And I just hung the parachutes out, let them pop, and drug them the rest of the way, because it straightened the car out, planted the back tires, and still got to the finish line. But she was just a little bit ahead.
Yeah. What do you think that thing actually runs? You think it runs in the 8s quarter mile time? I bet it does.
Man, it's hard to say, but probably so. And they can't run it like on a prepped track, because it'll break, honestly. Yeah. They have to have that loose, in that wheel speed.
There's a place in Kentucky they can take it. Those guys that had a race last weekend.
Oh, really?
It was a no prep race on a brand new surface at looked like it was about 10 degrees, and it would look like Disney on ice. It was unbelievable.
Oh,
Literally, man. What do you think of this? Both of y'all, Brian, Alex, what do you guys think of the top end racing thing? Like, no prep is one thing, and it's pretty well established. I admit, when no prep racing was kind of coming about and becoming popular, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I felt like we were taking something that was already inherently dangerous and just making it worse, right? I would liken it to putting spikes between the jumps on motocross tracks. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of how it felt. But I became sold on it over time, and I was certainly glad to see people make the move from racing on industrial areas or out on old country blacktops, moving to the racetrack. I was super excited about that. The new thing, and it's not really new, they've been doing it for a long time, but it's the big money, the purses, the competition level in recent, well, I'd say like the last year or two has really gone way up with these top end races. There's a huge one coming up, I believe this weekend, or is it this weekend or was it last week? Well, there was a huge one in Darlington Dragway, on the top end of Darlington Dragway, that Corey Stamper put on. And these are becoming relatively commonplace. What's your take on it, Brian? Like the top end craze?
I think, to me, the only time it gets real weird is when they reverse the direction, because that was like back in the day, that was the King of the Concrete. King of the Concrete, I think, was one of the first to ever do this. And I think that was in Ardmore, Oklahoma. And they ran towards the starting line. And,
you had cars like dodging the tree.
Yeah, Troy Green, I think, had a throttle stick. He had to dodge the tree at almost full throttle and make a left hook down the staging lanes. Topeka, Kansas, a couple years ago, they reversed the direction of the track, built a sand trap, built a wall, and then the thing rained out. And they came back the next week, and I think they lost their backside on that. I mean, to me, it's like, hey, it's another thing. I think if it's getting people in the racetrack, it's fine. I just think it's weird. If you change the direction of the thing, I'm not really a fan of that. But if you're going in the normal course of business, well, why not?
Alex, would you enter one of those races? Like, if you had a car, if you had a 10.5, a 28 10.5 car, and they were racing at some of these deals, there's like $100,000. I mean, is that tickle your fancy?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially after running on that airport runway at this point, I'm, good and confident with anything, really. But I agree with Brian completely on the reversing the direction. I think that's wild and crazy, of course. But, as long as the shutdown has enough room still to shut down, then, whatever. But I guess I may not understand what the point is, instead of just scraping the track down to the concrete and just using, the normal part, unless they just
I think it's just there's this move, and the King of the Concrete in Ardmore, Oklahoma was the first one. I remember running the story in the magazine. Mike, you remember we did like a 2 or 3 page deal.
And I think, wasn't
DI.
that the first time we saw like Big Chief?
Yeah, man, that was
on the pages of the magazine. I mean, I think that's where we first he was on our radar.
100%. And that was actually one of the first kind of first part of our relationship with that whole group, that whole cast of characters, is they were so appreciative that we gave them some ink, because all the ink and all the talk they were getting otherwise was about cars dodging the Christmas tree. It was very negative publicity, and we were like one of the only people that were trying to fan the flame in a positive fashion. So it kind of started our whole deal, and having a back and forth relationship with that group of guys. But they're a belief, and I think the belief system that still exists today is that that's like how you recreate a legal street racing. Like, that's the closest you can come to a surface that was not ever prepped, has never had, a tractor drag tires up and down it, or has never had a rotator on it. I think that's the belief system. They did one recently at Rockingham Dragway earlier this summer. We ran a story on it in the most recent issue of the magazine. A young man, Mike Gunter, won, I think, $60,000.
Big payday. Yeah,
big payday, man. And they had like over 100 cars enter this deal. And I think he waded through 6-7 rounds of eliminations to leave with $60,000. But it was a huge deal. And when he told me, to be honest, initially I was going, man, this is crazy. Like, someone's going to get hurt. I don't know how I feel about it. However, I was also when he started talking about the combination, and that it's like a pretty attainable car with like a LS with a big plate system on it. Like, it's kind of cool to think that it's not a super exotic hot rod, and this guy's getting to race for like real serious money. Like, it's hard to be upset about that.
Yeah, I think, listen, it speaks to the track operators too. Like 10 years ago, maybe 10 years ago plus now, when if anybody would have suggested anything like this to people, they would have run them out the gate. And guys like Jim Hughes in Tucson has been doing this for several years now, and I think Hughes actually went to the point of he went around and got to figure out where the street racing spots were, or asked the guys where they go street racing, and he went around with his grip meter and actually pulled grip on all of them, and kind of went back to the racetrack and found the place that it was like, all right, this is exactly what you guys got there. And I just think this is the way that our sport navigates itself, and it's the way that this stuff has happened since the sport started, where everybody finds these little niche ways to do something that they want to do in a different fashion, and thankfully the track operators are savvy enough or desperate enough to take the opportunity to do it.
It is interesting, man. It's like how many different ways can you use this strip of asphalt and concrete? Right. And I think that's really what it is. I mean, at this point in time, you got to find a way, and you got to give people what they want. I don't think that for me, I do enjoy the fact that there's like a legal alternative, a safe alternative. Even some of these airport races, big fan of that, big fan of what's going on. I know, Brian, you've even organized many of these land speed type of events and standing mile type of events. But I always have had a little bit of there's no guard walls, there's nothing to contain these things. And I've actually talked to like streetcar guys that love that, because like they don't got to worry about hitting the wall. Yeah. I'm like, well, what about barrel rolling through that cornfield? Like that seems like we want to avoid it. But I'm glad to see some of that move to the racetrack. Real quick, and just talking about you racing on an airstrip, Alex and Brian, your history with that type of racing. Where do you stand on that? Like, what do you make of that part of our industry right now? It seems to have maybe lost some momentum in recent months or years.
Yeah, I mean, that incident in Texas, I believe this year, was just a wholly and utterly preventable tragedy, and that's the type of thing which is it creates these stains, right? And that will stain this style of racing for a very long time. And there are people that have been doing this style of competition properly forever, meaning you don't put people anywhere near the end of the racetrack. You don't put people anywhere near the surface at all. If you're not going to have any sort of a fixed barrier. When we were running the East Coast Timing Association in Wilmington, it was at least a little bit more than a quarter mile from the taxiway that was the return road where everybody would pit and everything like that to the actual surface. We never had anybody get close. And then we also would stop the ability of people to be set up anywhere past a certain area. So, but it was going like great guns for a long time. You had the Want to Go Fast series, and those guys were putting on a gazillion events a year, and the bottom kind of fell out for them. There were a couple of high profile fatalities over the last couple of years in that style of competition. And obviously when stuff like that happens, the insurance rates go way up, and it takes people out of the equation. But I think it's, one of the things that I think I can talk about without getting in trouble, and I will talk about it now, and maybe I will get in trouble, but
let's hope.
We have a lot of conversations around different things inside the NHRA. And one of the things that we've talked about and have been, really working on in a lot of different phone calls and conversations and meetings is developing some protocols and developing some guidelines, some measures, some ability to, how do we I'm not going to say run a national event. I'm not going to say that at all, but how do we help these guys that are trying to run on an airport and help them get insurance and help them do the things they need to do? What can we do to develop protocols where we could maybe sanction an event like this so long as it follows XYZ rules? And I do think that is a way to help this style of racing and give people more options.
That's honestly
like a starter kit.
We literally talked about it right here on the show. When that thing happened, and I didn't mean to like be inflammatory or accusatory by pointing a finger at the NHRA, but I really did. I said, hey, I think this is where there is a huge opportunity for the NHRA to have some sort of protocols in place, or like, I'm envisioning like a white paper or a starter kit. Here's how to put on a safe, successful drag race from the experts who I think unequivocally are the best at putting on drag races or putting on speed contests. The National Hot Rod Association, maybe they could put together like a starter kit or like a breakdown of, here's how the race procedures, here's how you should do this, here's how you should have the track set up, here's some general parameters that will help you. Obviously, it's a nightmare of legality for the NHRA to offer any sort of direction to anyone, right. But heavy is the head that wears the crown, right? When you're the tip of the spear, when you're the kind of driving force in a lot of ways behind the entire industry, hey man, that's those tough problems kind of fall on your shoulders or land in your lap.
It's how the company started, 1954. That is exactly what Wally sent the safety safari out to do exactly what we're talking about. They literally
Yeah.
went to airport runways and said, "Hey guys, this is how you do this. Get your head out of your ass. Don't do that. Do this. Figure it out." So
Yeah, we talked about that when that fatality happened at that deal. How that's actually how NHRA came about, as a safety concern more than anything. So yeah, it's a nightmare, and I think NHRA wrongly kind of gets the, like Wes said, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Like, they're supposed to fix this, with there really being very limited benefit on their end. But maybe there's a middle ground where they can provide some kind of guidance without getting their hand all the way into that type of deal.
I think it's interesting. Okay, we're getting some shit in the comments right now about not talking about NHRA drag racing. We've got two of the big stars, big personalities that exist in NHRA drag racing. We've talked about everything, but let's just kind of wrap up 2021, right? We had a wild end to the season. Alex, I think the first thing we should talk about here right quick is just the Power to the People campaign. This, I think it's a fantastic deal that really speaks to your status in our industry and the following that you have. Can you just kind of take us through what that whole situation, how you felt about it, the feedback you've got? I got my package in the mail. Thank you very much. I got my signed poster, my autographed Hot Wheel. I brought it with me in case somebody called me a liar. It's on that shelf, so I'm not going to get it. But take us through that whole experience, Alex, because it was really cool to watch it unfold, and all the pictures and seeing everybody identifying themselves and tagging friends. What a cool deal.
It was really cool. And it was, I did this deal last year in the Pro Stock car. I've wanted to do it for a couple of years before, but I was just always too scared to, honestly, mainly because I didn't think that I would be able to actually raise the money to go. And I thought how embarrassing it would be to have to give, 20 or 30 people that did sign up their money back and tell everybody else, sorry guys, we
got $1,800.
Yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, like I had to have all of it to be able to make the race. And so this year, the Top Fuel deal was basically right at double. But having success with it last year, I thought I would give it one more shot. All of my sponsors choose which race I run based on where they're strong in certain regions. And this year, Pomona usually is one of them. But for whatever reason, this year it didn't make the list. And I really wanted to run the last race of the season. And I kind of put it off for a while. And then I finally decided, like, no, let's do it. Just do it. If you build it, they will come. And so I launched this deal, and I had a couple different packages where people could get their name on the car. And they would end up getting like one of my Hot Wheels cars. Between the two packages, there are different things. Like one of them, you get a shirt. Like there's more for between the two. But what everybody for sure gets is their name on the car and a poster. And when the race is over, I peeled every person's name off of the car one by one and put them all back on the piece of transfer paper that they came on. Put them in my suitcase, hauled them home, and I stuck every single one of these names on a poster, signed it. And so now these people actually have a really cool keepsake that is like, it's a real part of the race car that went 324 miles an hour down the track on national television at a live NHRA event. And people really seem to like it. And it's really remarkable that many people could come together and pull it off. So whether they did it for me to help me get to the race, or if they did it to get their name on just a Top Fuel car, either way, gosh, I was just so thankful to even be able to make it out there.
From the booth, Brian, like looking down at that car, it really looked great. Like the
cool.
Pro Stock car in St. Louis last year was bitchin'. I mean, it does. You always have great looking race cars, Alex. Shout out to Blackbeard Designs. He does a great job for you. That car, the Top Fuel car, though, it really did look good. What's your take? Like seeing all the big names, Matco or DHL or whatever, to look down, whether you're up there for Friday night or watching along on TV. What's it like to talk about that car?
No, it's cool. It's cool because it's I think at times we need to be reminded, that our drivers have great fan followings. And this is one of the ways that you get reminded of that when a driver can appeal to his fan following and say, listen, I got to get to Pomona, need your help. Here's what I can do for you if you can do something for me. and he pulled it off. And as Alex said, it's a risk, right? Because if you do it and you got right, you got to send your mom her money back and your aunt her money back, and you go, oh, Jesus. But no, it was really fun. We talked about it a bunch on the show because it's a worthwhile thing and it's an interesting thing. And we're in this era that people are becoming incredibly creative on how they get themselves to the racetrack. We see, it's always been, we got to make the B2B deals, we got to do this, that, and the other thing. And obviously those are foundational methods of raising sponsorship money and getting your team funded and continue to be funded. But we have seen a great number of one-off deals. We've seen a great number of events like Power to the People. We've seen a lot of really creative stuff done. So no, I think it's fantastic. And I'm not just saying this because you're sitting here, Alex, but your story was one of the neatest stories of 2021. I mean, it was a brilliant thing to see you show up there in Denver. Rather, it was great to have the videos you shot of getting your license and what that experience was like. I think I was never doubting your relationship with Scott Palmer, but on the face of it, a little bit of an odd couple, right? And it turns out that you guys meshed together perfectly. So it was a really fun story to follow along with, a really fun story to tell, and even better when you get to make a couple of round wins over the course of the year and get out there and show that you're capable of handling one of these cars. So no, it was all around. It was a really fun storyline to follow. The circumstances of why it happened made it even better. The whole thing just kind of came together as a neat testament to not just your creativity, but your drive to succeed doing this. So it's cool.
Do you guys think that and I know that we're about to lose you here in a few minutes, Alex, and I appreciate you being here. I know you got to bounce shortly. Last question for you. I'm going to convince Brian to hang around for a little longer, though, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just curious. We were just talking about the B2B deals. Alex, you and I have had a bazillion conversations about the B2B opportunities that exist in our sport, and they're nothing to bat your eyes at. I mean, there's a lot of money that moves around in our sport and outside of it. And there's ways that guys can make money, save money by way of drag racing. But I'm curious, before you came on, Alex, we were just talking about like the content creator being a job title in 2021, right? I mean, these are influencer being a job title in 2021. Do the two of you think that there is an opportunity? Like, is there a newfound opportunity or a renewed opportunity to just be a sponsored race car driver? I mean, do you think that that's kind of coming back with the platform that exists via Fox, via YouTube, et cetera? I mean, is drag racing garnering that kind of eyeballs and attention where you don't got to worry about if you can save somebody some money on their shipping bill? They just want to be attached to you. Alex, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. Unfortunately, the expenses between the two are so far different, really. Where it costs hundreds of thousands or millions and millions of dollars a year to fund a Top Fuel car versus if you're just a YouTuber making crazy videos around the house or whatever, and those guys are the ones that are actually making the millions, and it's completely reversed. But I think that drag racing is on the up and up, and especially, I never really noticed. I mean, I knew that the nitro stuff was bigger. My heart was always in the door car stuff, but I really never actually noticed how much bigger the nitro stuff is than like Pro Stock or Pro Mod until I made the switch. And it's, as far as numbers go and social media, as far as people being receptive about it, there are hard statistics. And as far as what we've come up with so far, it's about 600% better than Pro Stock. And that's astronomical. But yeah, you have to be a personality. You have to have a following, and if you could be, looking back, I wish that I would have gotten into the YouTube side earlier. And because that does make really good money, once you can build a following, and who knows, YouTube could be paying the entire bill to run Top Fuel at this point. It's hard to say, but it is a lot of work, even though they're just, usually some goofy kids making some weird videos around their house. It's a lot of work to pull it off. You have to have, your own film crew, your own editors. You have to be posting a video almost every single day. And either way, there's more to it than, what people think, especially like these days. Some families have a YouTube house, right? They
It's
go,
not a joke.
all
yeah,
of them.
it's not even their real home. It's their studio. But I don't know. That may not be the
No, I
best
think it's a
answer.
fair answer. I mean, it's weird because it felt like one of the best examples that I can give. And Mike, we've got a question from Mike for you, Alex, before you leave. So Mike, you're just going to have to jump in here. But I do want to say one of the things that I always kind of got a kick out of is how long it took for John Force to have hospitality, because he didn't have to. Right. It was such a unique situation. John Force, he didn't have to have a big hospitality thing. He didn't have to bring all the Castrol workers in or whatever to justify that investment. They just wanted to be associated with him. They wanted him as a brand ambassador. That was like as pure of a sponsorship of a race car driver as I'd been exposed to, right, in drag racing. And it was just neat. And then you can see in recent years, obviously Castrol exits, but now there's a place for people. There's picnic tables in the John Force Racing pit area, right? And it hasn't always been that way. And I think it's a sign of the times. However, I would argue that it may be reversing course to some extent. I mean, I do think that the platform that exists in drag racing right now, the eyeballs it would, by all accounts that the NHRA is, generating at this moment, especially in Top Fuel, Funny Car for those classes, I think it's at an all-time high. You probably know the stats, Brian, is drag racing visibility, but viewership, it's at an all-time high across the board, right?
I mean, from what I understand, yeah. I mean, especially like you look at what we did with that NFL game and the NFL race. That's just like
we talked about
huge,
that. Yeah, and you guys knew that
thing.
going into that deal. We talked about it at dinner the night before. We ran into each other, and you guys were anticipating that. So, I mean, do you guys have that marked out on the schedule? Like, oh, we've got an NFL lead in.
Oh yeah, no,
This
that is an enormous, for us, that is an enormous, obviously, you're going to be carrying an enormous audience off the game into your show. So it's one of those things where it's don't screw this up. But you're going to be receiving a gift here. You're going to be receiving a humongous gift, and do not get a paper cut opening the present. Make sure you do it right. And that, if you watch that show, we threw the sink at it. I mean, we had the remote setup where we had Jamie Howe and Ron Tolbert up there. We had a bunch of people in the pits. It was pretty much all systems go. So it was fantastic.
Well, it looks like the effort's paying dividends. Mike, before we lose Alex, I'm going to give you the floor for a second here.
We were talking about the YouTube deal and how that's like a whole different path. And we talked about opening the show crossover stars. Like there's a few people, I consider you one of those, Alex, that tend to dabble in all different kinds of things and different forms of racing. I mean, you're primarily drag racing, but you do a lot of other stuff as well. But Ken Block is one of those to me. Haley Deegan comes to mind. I saw Ken Block at the Charlotte race. He was hanging out with Tony Stewart in Leah Pruitt's pit. Is drag racing on his radar? What did he have to say about drag racing when you hung out with him filming that video? And I mean, with his daughter kind of coming up through, and drag racing is fertile grounds for the diversity that exists in motorsports, especially with we've seen the Force girls, Leah Pruitt,
Erica.
So is that on their radar? I mean, she looks like a talented young driver, and he looks like he's maybe kind of stepping back and seeing a broader picture. So any insight on all that?
The main reason that he had to get out of the Hoonicorn is because of his switch to Audi, with his sponsorship commitment to them. With the Hoonicorn being a Ford, they were searching for who was going to be the next person to drive it, and they just found that his daughter was the next best in line. As far as what Ken's plans are to pursue drag racing, I don't think so. I offered him a few passes in the Corvette anytime, even at a track, and he said, "Oh no, like he wasn't interested at all." So, I don't.
Does that make you stick your chest out? I'm just curious. Like, I find that interesting. One of my favorite things that happened in 2021 was Joe Costello interviewing Ken Block in Charlotte alongside the track, either before, during, after a Top Fuel session, and seeing him, who we've seen like slide off the side of Pikes Peak, say no thanks to driving a Top Fuel car, which you did like on a gravel road in Wichita, Kansas. I mean, I think that's pretty cool, right? I mean, if we're being little kids here for a minute, Ken Block won't do what you do.
Well, it can go both ways. Either that is the reason, or he's like, dude, have you seen the stuff that I have done? Like, I've jumped a rally
yeah,
car
it could be.
across the Grand Canyon. Like, I'm good with the straight line stuff. It's cool, bro.
I choose to believe that he's scared shitless, and
I'm gonna go with that.
Okay, I choose to believe that he's terrified.
It's still cool to see him. I mean, to see you on that on the deal on the YouTube video, to see him hanging out at the races. Like you said, Joe interviewed him. It gets me excited sometimes just to see drag racing sort of getting that acknowledgement on this more mainstream stage. So kudos to you guys. I think you're always kind of pushing that envelope as well. So kudos to anyone that kind of crosses over those boundaries.
Well, thanks. It was really fun, and Ken was awesome. Everybody out there was absolutely great to deal with. So I would definitely like to do it again sometime. And I said next time I'm bringing the Top Fuel car, and so we can figure it out.
That would be spectacular. And the problem is Scott Palmer would be there tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
he's ready.
"Nope, yep, no problem.
I
I've
already
ran on
asked
worse surfaces." That's what he would say. Guaranteed, man.
Yep.
Well, Alex, thank you for being here. I wish we could have you longer, but I know you're a busy man. Go do the deal, flying all over the world, doing big timer and stuff. We appreciate it, buddy. I'm just going to throw this out there, a little guilty by association moment. Will we see you at DI After Hours powered by Titan Racing Engines? Are you coming to the biggest party in drag racing?
The only one that I have not been to was the one in 2020, which it wasn't
Didn't
there
happen.
either.
Didn't exist,
So
yeah.
I'll be there for sure.
All right, brother. Well, thank you so much for the support, man. I appreciate it, and thanks for coming and chatting, talking drag racing with us. We'll see
Thank
you soon.
guys very
Thanks,
much.
man.
Yeah, Alex.
All right, bye.
How much? And Brian, I want to keep you as long as I can. I know you're busy
I'll
as
give you-
well.
I'll give you
but if
another
you've
20
got-
I'll give you another
okay,
25.
if you got a little bit of time, we'll keep
I'll
you
give you
for a
another
minute.
25.
All right. So I want to talk about the impact that you think Tony Stewart's had. His presence, I think it's been meaningful. Whether he's in a car, standing behind one, I don't care. The fact that he's there, speaking of guilty by association, I think has been a difference maker for the sport of drag racing. Where do you stand on it?
Yeah, I mean, and we've only really begun to see the earliest
sir.
stages of this, So I think the amazing thing is, when they had the press conference down there in Charlotte to announce the official formation of the team, which the great big open secret in drag racing that they announced, which they had to do, and did it in an incredibly proper
I was just going to
way.
say, like,
Massive press
even
conference.
that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that
was
on
to
another
me
level.
I don't know. Elvis could be driving for Coletta Motorsports starting in
You're not gonna have
2022,
that
and
press
we
conference.
wouldn't see that level of production to announce it. I was hoping that people would go, "Oh, I see why they do that now."
Yeah.
Right? Like, because that was a
We
huge
need that,
production.
but that's
we
exactly
need more
what
of
he's
it.
going to bring. In my opinion, that's what he's going to bring. They're going, other teams are going to go, "Oh, that's how those guys do it over there." Now we're going to have to step up our game. I think competition, or it high tide lifts all boats. We say that all the time, and I think we're going to see a lot of that. I was there at that press conference, and I spoke with some NHRA executives. I think that they're going to embrace this. I mean, Brian, I know maybe you can't speak on this.
Yeah.
The impression they gave to me was, we're excited to see this. We're going to welcome Tony with open arms and his ideas and things that we can learn from him. And he's going to learn from us, but we've got a lot to learn from this guy.
Yeah, and that's a thing that one of the hallmarks of Tony Stewart's career, right? He's never been afraid to open his mouth. He's never been afraid to share his feelings, positive or negative, good or bad. So I think everybody's ready for that and that kind of honesty and that type of discussion. I think you have multiple overarching impacts here. The first one is the obvious exposure end of him being involved in the sport. And I think when we go to places and they know that his team's coming, I think there are going to be people that have not bought a ticket to a drag race coming to watch a drag race. And I think that's a huge impact. I think the way that we're going to watch the infrastructure of that teamwork is going to be a new experience for a lot of our teams out here. I think that he's going to be able to incorporate resources, through his NASCAR side of things. And I realize that Stewart Haas Racing and Tony Stewart Racing are different, yet the experience of being on both sides of that are going to help them out. And I think at the end of the day, this is going to open other people in stock car racing's eyes to look over and go, what's he see over there that we're not seeing, or what's he doing over there that we're not doing? And, obviously there were some other NASCAR team owners that were kind of inspecting things at NHRA drag racing over the last several races of the year. Some guys were out there poking around the pits. There was one team that was almost, I'm not going to say sold, but there was one team that was on the verge of a major partnership with a NASCAR team owner that didn't end up coming to fruition, but who knows if that happens in the future. So, it's a multiple level thing, and it's enormously great for our sport. And I think you have two of the highest profile drivers of the entire sport as well involved. It's not like he doesn't have somebody. Neither of those people they're going to say, who's that? It's not like Tony Stewart came in and plunked a new kid in the seat that was a good super gas racer. These are two of the highest profile names. And obviously they have a much taller hill to climb with Leah's car than they do with Matt's. Matt's car is coming over effectively a turnkey operation with effectively all the same people involved. My understanding is I think the whole team, I know Dickie Venables came and Conaway came and Stretch came over there. With Leah's car, they got Neil Strasbaugh on it, and they've had to assemble a team. And there's obviously talent out there right now. And my understanding is that they've completed that process, and she's been posting some pictures. And I mean, they're setting up the shop literally, and the meter's running. So it's going to be interesting to see how far along they are in terms of they'll be prepared when they go to Pomona, right? They will be prepared to race, but will the whole setup be done by then? Be interesting to see.
Right. It's going to be fun to watch, to be honest. What I'm looking forward to seeing happen is how much I don't know if this is the right phrase or not, like media savvy. Like he's obviously not, I mean, he's been a guy that's been pretty, growly with the media at times in the past. However, I think he recognizes the value of the media and the opportunity that these different outlets, provide to him. And I'm hoping we see, because it seems like media obligations aren't something that are like fully, embraced by the NHRA pro level masses. Most of these guys are either independently wealthy or maybe don't have to do those type of things, right? Because that's, not the nature of the business, or that's not the nature of their relationship. And I'm hoping Tony's presence and just that press conference, I don't mean to put too much weight on a table and a black tablecloth and, some microphones and lights, but the effort that was put into that and the understanding that like, hey, we've got to make this a big deal. We have to treat this like a big deal. If we want to sell big ticket sponsorships, if we want to have all sorts of logos on the fire suit and all those things, you have to do all the things that come with it. And I think drag racing's missed the boat on that. I mean, turning everything into an event. I mean, the UFC, I know I use that example perhaps too frequently, but whether they're inducting someone into their Hall of Fame, whether they're announcing a fight, whether they make every step of the way feel like the Super Bowl. And I'm hoping that some of what we get from Tony Stewart and his involvement in his NASCAR and IndyCar and all these other experiences he's had, owning a racetrack, owning a series, the SRX deal, I'm hoping he brings some of that with him. I really do.
Well, and I'm not sure if you saw this yesterday, but Adam Stern, who's one of the reporters for the Sports Business Journal, tweeted out the fact that one of the things that's on the table for SRX in 2022 is an all NHRA team, meaning there'd be an NHRA driver at every one of the SRX events that apparently would work. So again, that's another giant side benefit, because now you're putting these guys on, in granted fish out of water, but who cares? That makes it even more entertaining to watch. To some of your points, the splintering that we have seen and will continue to see over the next few weeks of these teams and of these people is really the best thing, in my opinion, that could happen to NHRA drag racing. And it's almost a heretic thing to say, and people look at you like crazy when you say, "Well, what do you mean? Well, how is this good?" When everybody is racing to try to eat, that makes this sport good. That's why everybody looks back at the 70s and says, "Oh my God, it was like the greatest thing ever." And it was an incredible period of time. And all those guys were match racing their brains out because they needed to make the $100 to get enough fuel to go to the next race or to buy a hamburger that night. The stakes are higher now and things are different. But now that when you take everybody and separate them out, it's so much better. A guy like Alex Laughlin in this environment is in a way better place to succeed than he would have been 5 years ago, 10 years.
1,000%.
I agree.
Chris
I agree.
The Baldwins of the world, the Justin Ash. We can go down the list. I mean, you look at what's happening in Top Fuel for next year with Schumacher coming back. There's the big rumor happening now is that Austin Prock's going to be making a return next year, and hopefully we find out about that over the next couple of weeks. You look at Doug Foley going to expand his schedule, Trip Tatum going to expand his schedule. You look around and it's like, holy smoke, there's a lot of good stuff happening here, and all of it is independent.
Yes.
I think that's the big difference.
It kind of levels the playing field a little bit. And this is a big deal. We talk about this a lot. It's kind of the reason why we have this show in the NBA, NFL, offseason movement, free agency, trades, rumor mill is as big as the actual game itself. And I feel like we all agree, or at least Wes and I do, that NHRA and drag racing as a whole kind of misses that, to where it's just like, we can't talk about that until it's done. And I mean, that's like a week before Pomona, and then we're on to the racing, and we don't really talk about all of the excitement, the drama, the rumors, who could go where. I mean, not putting words in your mouth or having you speak for NHRA, but even just personally, how do you feel about the silly season this year as far as it being more ramped up than usual?
So a couple of things. One, it's a cultural thing, and you couldn't be more correct about what you just said in terms of like, don't whisper about that. Don't say about that. Because, the last 5 or 6 of our races, Tony and I were just throwing a lot of bait fishing out there, stuff that we had heard and stuff that was,
I noticed that. I noticed you guys were more free with that than usual.
And I would get my ass burned to the ground. I'm telling you right now, I got burned to the ground by a lot of people over those several weeks. And I said the same thing to them that you just said. I said, in every sport, in every other sport, nobody hides behind or under the sheets with their eyes up like this, going, like, is it time yet? Is it time yet? Can I come? Is the thunderstorm past yet? No.
It's a business. Stuff. Entire networks and businesses are built around that. So yeah, I did notice. I mean, yeah, hats off to you for kind of going that route, because I noticed you guys were kind of letting that fly more than usual.
Why not?
I even missed a couple things, and some people, did you hear what Brian Lohnes said on the broadcast about this and that? I'm like, why? I kind of heard that. But he said that on the broadcast?
Well, because it's so unusual.
Yeah.
I mean, typically everybody runs away from that.
Yeah, it's where we got to be. And in terms of this off season, I mean, 10, 15 years since we've had this. Like, it's always, the conversations are always, are the crew guys going to have jobs next year? Now the conversation is, are there enough crew guys to fill all the jobs next year?
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It is. It's a great problem. Awesome. It's a great problem. And all the people that are going to get opportunities this next season that likely wouldn't have, especially like good crew guys, good car chief guys, good tuner, people that maybe would have had to have operated in the shadows of a big name for the next 3 or 4 years if things kind of maintain the status quo.
I want to see people getting a shot. Absolutely.
Yes, and we're going to see some guys that probably aren't ready for the big time that are going to get thrown into the deep end of the pool. And I mean, there will be some of them sink, but there will be plenty of them that swim.
That makes for great stories and great racing, in my opinion.
Listen, all these guys that'll get the shot, it's the offensive coordinator that gets his first head coaching job. Right. And typically it doesn't work. It doesn't, the guys that are really good will have a decent season and they figure it out, but sometimes it doesn't work and you go back and most every one of those guys gets a second shot at it. And usually the second time around it goes a little bit better. So I look at it in that sense. The other thing I look at is, like, we were doing all these SEMA interviews, and every person that says sat down and looked at me when we were talking, they're like, oh no, we locked our whole crew in. Like, we already had the meetings. This was at SEMA. Like, we already had the meetings for next year. We locked it in. And I've gotten phone calls for the last week and a half about who left where, and that crew that was locked in is gone to shit. And so what this means is, we always look at drag racing. A lot of people look at drag racing this deep, right? You got to go this deep in it to really get it. All these shifting around crew guy things, all that does is breed more animosity. And what we need is more animosity. We really do.
You're right.
And so it thickens the plot. I cannot tell you how excited I am for next year. Not just saying it to say it. I'm saying it because it's like, you look around and you go, I have never in my life seen anything like this in this sport at this level. And I haven't, obviously guys back in the day saw it happen every year. Well, I have not seen it.
Same. Haven't seen it.
Spectacular.
Yeah, it's been pretty stale as far as this movement and everything. I think the 2022 season is going to be as interesting and as exciting as we've had in a decade or more.
So, and I know we're going to cut you loose here momentarily, Brian, but I appreciate you very much hanging out with us. And I also want to take this moment here. I'm going to I appreciate all the people that support this show. Holy cow. Stroud Safety, Flow Racing, Elite HP. Which one was I missing? I'm missing one. Redline Synthetic Oils. Remember, friends and racers, the Wes Buck Show is brought to you each and every week by the team at Elite HP, the world leader in used race cars, racing engines, parts, and tools. Located in Fort Worth, Texas, Elite HP is operated by real deal drag racers with over 100 years of combined racing experience who can steer you in the right direction for all your racing needs, whether it's a turnkey pro mod or a set of pro jacks. Check out all their inventory at elitehp.com. Let's do a little bit of king for the day, what's next type of thing. We hear rumors, Brian, of a NHRA reality show, right? A reality television series, or we understand that that's kind of in the works. We've heard news about an NHRA video game. Lots of positive things happening. If you had to pick something that you were going to bring to the table in 2022 for the sport of drag racing, like what would you say?
I would say both of those things would be vitally important. Now, I'm not ignoring you. I'm going to look for something. I'm going to give you a peek at something.
Oh, this is exciting.
That you were going to dig as soon as I find it, which is buried in my email, which is
that's okay. My email's in bad shape.
Improperly cataloged here. So no, I'm going to talk as I look, but the idea to me is like the shoulder programming, as you would call it, a reality series, however you want to say it, vitally important. And the video game thing, a lot of people are like, oh, I hope this is coming along. I hope they're actually doing this. I hope it's going to be cool. See what that is?
That's the tower in Gainesville in a video game. And it looks good. Jumbotron, the water box looks sick. Well, hey, color me impressed so far.
And so every single one of the national event tracks is getting modeled like that.
Oh, wow.
There is an insane amount of work going into this thing. And, every department of our company has been involved. The tech department has been working hand in hand as far as like the amount of data that these guys have that are working and to work on the physics of the game. I mean, it's an incredible crap ton of work, but I promise you that the effort going into that is next level.
And to be honest, it has to be that way. Yeah. And that was one of the things that we said when the announcement was made. I just said, like, I hope the NHRA pays enough attention to this and invest in this, not only monetarily, but like time and energy wise, enough to make it a worthwhile effort. And I tell you what, I
think that's the key thing. I think a lot of the hardcore fans get a hold of this and go, I mean, my Top Fuel car sounds like a pro stock car.
Yeah.
I mean, what's going on?
Listen, there were people from damn Dolby. Getting sound for this game at the races. So it's not like this is not something where like people just gave these guys like, oh, here's what a dragster looks like, and then have fun with that. I'll show you one more thing because I'll definitely get yelled at for this, but I think it's cool to show people that
keep it going.
Keep on going.
So this is just, and again, the phase of this, the process is long, but it's moving ahead. Where is this message? So this is the last kind of modeling that we've had of we've worked on with a funny car, and that's the continuing process as well. So
it looks good.
Multiple categories. It's not just the 3 pro categories. There's actually going to be 2 sportsman categories in the game as well. It's going to
fantastic segue.
And pro mods will be in there too.
Oh, yes. Thank the good Lord. Pro mods are included. That could have been a little bit of a fight starter over here in my neck of the woods. Curious take. We had multiple people ask about this. What's your initial reaction to FX? Factory experimental, this brand new eliminator that y'all are going to roll out in 2022.
When I got to read the rules, I think the first pass of the rules or the 50th pass I got to read at Indy, I'm reading them like, damn, this sounds pretty freaking cool. Like it sounds pretty good. And I think the approach that was taken to put this together was the right approach. It wasn't rushed out the door. There was a lot of back and forth. There was a ton of conversation with the OEs and what do you like about this? What do you dislike about this? What would be attractive to you about this? And when a guy like Jerry Bickle is actively telling people, hey, we're building chassis for these, like when he's sticking his face out there going, to me, that's a great signal. And you got guys like Jeff Turk putting one of these cars together, and Chris Holbrook supposedly putting one of these cars together. And the biggest thing for me on Factory Experimental that I don't want to get lost on people is that this is a grand opportunity for the local regional chassis shop guy to really shine, because those guys build a lot of 25-3 cars. My buddy John Sandoll, 2 chassis designs. You get DNC Racing. Those guys are both of them within 10, 15 minutes of my house. These are guys that are well known in a radial or small tire world or whatever, but these are guys that can build those cars.
1,000,000%.
And you got a ton of engine builders out there that can build these engines. I mean, we know about the Stanfields, we know about the Bartons, we know about the Holbrooks, we know about the Tony Bischoffs in Factory Stock Showdown. But again, this is a grand opportunity for some really talented smaller engine builders out there to get hooked up and be part of this program. So I was honestly surprised with how much interest it garnered right off the bat. It kind of blew me away.
Is it going to poach more from factory stock shootout or pro stock, or is it going to be kind of a melding of those two together? Is that how you see it? I mean, because you mentioned a lot of names. When the rules first came out, we were talking about a lot of pro stock guys going that direction, but you just mentioned a lot of factory guys.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I would my natural assumption or my natural answer to that question is it's more of a attractive to a factory stock showdown guy. If the OE manufacturers was still sponsoring, like full on sponsoring pro stock cars, I think we're having a different conversation. But since they're really not, I think those guys are on their program, and it wouldn't surprise me for a Mountain View Tire to have one of these cars to run. I think the Mitsos family would see something like that and go, it looks pretty cool to us. So. And also top sportsman racers. I really feel like there's a contingent of top sportsman guys that could look at a class like this and go, you know what? Hell yes.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's a solid observation, because that's those are kind of the people that I think will end up there. I think that there was an initial belief, and I kind of heard this, and we would hear this from viewers of the show, that pro stock seems to be as healthy as it's been in a hot minute. And yes, there's discussions that can be had about the fact that all the cars have Chevys in them and whatnot, whether they're Fords or whatever. But as far as participation is concerned, the class looks great right now. And I think there was an initial belief like, oh man, this could splinter or this could pull some people away. But I don't really see that being a real likelihood. I think it would be more, what's a good example? Erica Enders running her pro stock car and developing an AFX car and doing that at a handful of races. Same with Aaron Stanfield. We see him do that already with Factory Shootout. I think that's more of a more likely scenario.
Or maybe some of the folks that are at the back end of the pro stock ladder right now.
Do you think that NHRA wants this to become pro stock? Do you think there's a desire for this? Is this like the first step of replacing pro stock?
I think it's hard to say. I think Dr. Frankenstein wanted his monster to be his best friend. We all know how that worked out too. I think it's a difficult thing I think it's impossible in this sport to make something and say someday it's going to be this, because that has never freaking happened before in a way that anybody is expected, right? Nobody started racing top sportsman cars going, someday we're going to make this into pro mod. That shit just happened. Thank God. And it was awesome. So I don't necessarily think that anybody's sat at a table and gone, okay, well, in 2.5 or 3 years, we're going to start doing this or that. I think the idea is you build a class. If it garners a ton of interest, fantastic. You have a great, 10.5-inch tire class with stick shift transmissions and factory dimensions. So, it's tough to say. I've never been on a phone call or been in a meeting where someone said, someday this is going to be pro stock.
What do you think those things will run?
I think they'll be 690s. I think when 680s, 690s, when they get sorted out.
I agree. There's 6-second, 200-mile-an-hour players. There's no doubt about it. Well, Brian, thank you so much for being here, dude. Seriously, it's been fantastic to have you on here for a freaking hour and a half.
No, thanks for having us.
We got to do this more frequently. I hope to see you. Are you headed to the Snowbirds?
I am.
Okay,
man.
I figured as much. I think you're in for, dare I say it, perhaps the barn burner of all barn burners.
I've been having these multiple conversations with people, and I worked up notes on every single guy that's coming there. And it's like, this is the most accomplished field of race car drivers I've ever been around. And that doesn't even start to include the crew chiefs. You have multiple PDRA 2021 champions there. You got your Northeast Outlaw Pro Mod Association champion there. You got your NMCA champion there. That's just to start with, right? And then we talk about Halsey, Franklin. I mean, just shit. It's going to be awesome. Yeah.
I really think we're going to be looking back at this as like a moment, an iconic moment in door slammer drag racing history. I'm glad you'll be there to handle the call.
Catch it. We will be
Flow
Racing.
Man. Yes,
we'll be watching.
I'm going to remind folks,
Racing.
if you're not a subscriber to Flow Racing, make sure you log on to flowracing.com/drag illustrated. Subscribe. It's the best $150 that you will spend likely in your life to watch drag racing live 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's incredible, the opportunity that exists to us. Last question, bump spot and number one qualifier. We saw Tyler Crossnow, race director, series director for the PDRA last week or 2 weeks ago, predict a 359 being number one qualifier and a 366 bump, which Mike and I have both agreed is pretty salty. But watching Thursday or early testing, I mean, there's a dozen cars in that range already, and they're probably not even all there yet. What are your take on the performance marks we'll see this weekend in Bradenton?
So in my neurotic insanity of life, this is the qualifying sheet from the U.S. Street Nationals in Pro Mod. And so I had all these notes because I knew I was coming back, so I wanted to make sure I had a backup on it. But Randy Weatherford was the number 1 qualifier there at 59. Rivenbark was number 2 at 61. I think it's going to be 57. I think number 1's going to be 57. And I think the bump spot, I could buy a 64 to a 66 on that bump spot.
Wow.
32 freaking cars down. That's the other thing to think about. It's a damn 32
that's
car
the
field.
thing. I could go with that on 16 for sure, but 32, that's definitely stout.
Well, it is going to be fan-freaking-tastic, man. I'm glad you'll be the one delivering the information to all of us, man. What another dynamic duo. Oh, my God. You can't hardly make that thing any better than that. Incredible. Well, safe travels, Brian. Thank you so much for being here. We'll be hearing from you soon. Look forward to seeing you at PRI next week. We're actually going to be broadcasting this show Thursday morning from the PRI show floor, the PRI headquarters main stage. We'd love to have you swing by and say hi, and I'd also love to have you at our Pro Mod Summit. So thanks a bunch, Brian. We appreciate your insight and opinion as always.
Unless they revoke my credential before I get there, I'll be there.
Sounds like a plan, man. Thank you very much.
See you, man.
Holy cow, man. I kind of like the loosey-goosey just conversation. You know what I mean? Like, it's fun conversion. I love bringing Alex on while Brian was on. I like loosening it up a little bit, right?
Those are guys, especially Brian. We just got a comment. It's funny hearing Brian say shit. I wonder how tough it is for him not to say holy shit on live TV. I mean, hey, these guys are human and they do a great job on there, but it's great to hear some behind the scenes and a little more unfiltered commentary from Brian and some sneak peeks of the new game, which I think looks pretty promising.
I'm excited about that. I was genuinely concerned.
Well, they've never been great ever since I think NHRA Drag Racing 2, I think is what it was called on like PS2.
Yeah,
was like the last one that was decent, and then they were pretty bad after that. And then the competition from the mobile games. The mobile games have really set the standard now. So to see the effort going into it, it gives me a little hope.
It does. It gives me a ton of hope, man. Let's talk about the Snowbirds. We did have Victor Alvarez on here last Wednesday. Talked a lot about, this race and its significance. 50,000 to win, 50 years strong. Kind of hard to even believe this race has been around that long, let alone that facility. But looking at these names, do you think we're going to see somebody like sneak up and surprise us, or do you think it's going to be a usual suspect? I mean, you start talking about the people that are locked in for this event. It's an absolute who's who of door slammer drag racing. Do you think it's going to be a fresh face, a Ken Cartuccio or somebody that we haven't seen maybe in this segment jump up and surprise us, or is it going to be
my
Totoro
gut says,
or Halsey?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this last week. My gut says Halsey, Totoro, but if you've got 32 cars between a 359 or 357, like Brian said, in a 364 to a 366, anything can happen. Literally anything can happen if you've got 32 cars all capable of running within less than a tenth of each other.
Man, I think this is going to be the best race of the year. I really do. I hardly know what to think. And it's just so effortless. That's the thing that blows my mind is whether you see Jay Cox click off a 366. I watched that earlier. Ken Cartuccio went a 66. Chris Thorne went 67.
And all
Melanie
these combinations
went
together.
69.
That's the exciting part of it. It really is. This to me kind of reminds, it's one of the last remaining like true pro mod outlaw events where all the heavy hitters are there in great conditions, running all different combinations. We don't get to see this enough anymore.
No, I want to see more of it. Let's bring JT back in here. Where's Murder at?
Yeah.
We haven't seen him. Oh, he's like probably.
There he goes.
Sorry.
Drinking a beer. Oh, no, don't mind me.
I thought it was happy hour.
It is.
It is happy hour. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome
I've
to...
already started on mine while I was off the air a minute ago.
I knew you were.
Sco, watching along on YouTube, says that Randy Weatherford went a 64 earlier today. So, I mean, he's low for testing to the best of my knowledge. So he'll sneak up on you. You know what I mean? Like, that's another car that's damn... God, there's so many good cars.
There is.
It's hard to think that they can even get 32 cars, let alone 50. It's really impressive.
Of that quality.
Of that quality. It's a really, really impressive feat. And I love the fact that there's cars from all these different sanctions and series showing up at one race. Like this is how it's supposed to go. This is going to be the...
You can name 20 of those cars. You can name 20 of those cars and nobody's like, wow, I can't believe that, that car's doing it. I mean, there's such a level of competition there that, man, it's anybody's game, right? When you have that
Yeah.
many great cars.
Oh, yeah. 10,000% it's anybody's game.
And
What's
on
the
the ladder,
forecast for the
who's going to get
weekend?
knocked out? I mean,
Let's
my
pull that
gosh.
up.
Let's pull that up. I'm on it.
We'll have a full forecast in the comments before we can even get this.
Yeah,
going on.
we'll have a
Yeah.
full forecast in the comments. Okay, the weekend forecast looks like 70. Yeah, Friday 76, high of 76, low of 52. Saturday 76 and 56, Sunday 80 and 60.
Great weather.
Great weather. This is going to be spectacular.
So it's kind of getting warmer throughout the weekend. Pretty
Yeah,
much.
a little bit
So
warmer.
We're gonna see the home runs, Friday, but then you got to change your tune up a little bit. Sunny. I'm showing more cloud cover Friday and Saturday. Sunday more sun. So it'll change on Sunday. With that being said, I'm leaning even more toward one of the veterans taking this deal home, like a Totoro or Halsey.
I think so. If it is like a high noon type of drag race, right, where the conditions kind of start and the track's got sun on it all day, and you're racing in the heat of the day, and you're not waiting until 10 or 11 o'clock at night to run,
In the heat of the day.
Off the trailer in the heat of the day.
baby. It's really incredible, man. I'm genuinely excited, to be honest. Like, I had every intention of going, and I actually am unfortunately not going to make it. I was going to go, but between this back injury deal and the fact that we've got like the whole world of work to do next week, there's no good way to do it. The travel is challenging right now. It seems like Southwest has way less flights than they ever have, and Americans got it's a difficult thing. I didn't know how I was going to get down there and get back. You know what I'm saying? Without everything getting screwed up, man.
Yep.
What do you do?
Drive.
Yeah,
We've done it before.
Hey,
right?
how far is Fort Worth to Florida? Not as far as Kirksville to Florida.
No, I'm gonna look.
No, that was a long trip.
way. Let me do Fort Worth. Texas.
Stopped at like 6 Arby's.
Oh,
Between
man.
Florida and here. That
That was
was
a 6
it.
RB trip.
and one Nike outlet. Yeah.
It's farther than either of you guys think it is. How far do you think it is from Fort Worth to Bradenton, Florida?
Like
13
12 hours, 14 hours.
18 hours.
Oh my God.
1,175 miles.
Really?
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
too
man.
bad.
I mean, you're driving across half of Texas, or like a third of Texas, all of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, some of Georgia, and then down to Orlando. Holy crap.
Leave
man.
now.
Scott
Way to go.
Malpass asks, how did the DI Black Friday sale go? Really, really well. We didn't really promote Cyber Monday as much, but not as big as 2020, but really big. It's always exciting, man. Like in this day and age of printing a magazine, it's so cool we've mailed the magazine this month to more people than we've ever mailed it to, right, Mike? I mean, our
Yep,
circulation
that
is
is a
higher
fact.
right now than it has
Every
ever
month-
been in history.
Yeah, every month it ticks up by a few hundred.
And it continues to do it. And we always look forward to the end of the year because our Black Friday special is normally like a big bolster. I think in 2020, we sold 1,500 in 24 hours, which was huge for us. That was like, holy crap, we just bumped our circulation like significantly in one day. This year, we were closer to like 750, I think, on Friday alone. But again, I didn't push it as much. Not really any reason other than the fact that we were all over creation. We've got all this PRI stuff going on. I just didn't have the energy to be
Well,
honest.
we've got
I
some
didn't have
stuff.
it
I
in me.
mean, we've got some stuff cooking. So next year's going to look different. And
good
we've
news.
got some exciting stuff coming around the corner. So we're focusing on that as well.
What am I looking here? Let's open it up to
Scott-
questions. Anybody
Scott,
got questions? I'm happy to answer them.
Scott Malpass. See, I always get that. Getting your last name wrong is like a badge of honor. If I say
Yeah.
your last
You
name wrong,
do it like, yeah.
congratulations.
I mean, I'm bad about it, but the past 2 weeks, man, you kind of took the crown from me.
He told me that the Arby's vodka sold out in like 6 minutes, JT. So I'm sorry if you didn't get any.
It did sell out in like 6 minutes. Kevin Stevenson, Big Country, a lock for Ride Along Monday. Yes, Big Country, Corey Swanstrom will join us Monday night for the DI Ride Along. We were going to have Corey on last week, but it was a little bit controversial, like the show, this whole thing that was going on between Pat Musey, Lizzie Musey, Kai Kelly, and Justin Swanstrom and Corey, and it just felt like the better move was not to have that happen on the show, or have it like, I didn't want to rekindle a fight. It felt like things had kind of cooled off, and in the moment it was like, you know what, let's let this settle instead of have everybody relive it. We will hear Big Country side of the story on Monday night, and I'm very much excited about it. Everybody knows the Swanstroms are pretty pull no punches type of people, so it'll be very exciting to hear what he has to say. Tommy Cunningham from Stroud Safety, you are a big supporter. Thank you so much, Tommy. Just reach out to each other with fashion ideas.
Yeah. We don't really. No, I mean,
no. Well, Mike's got a shirt sponsor. Mike's got a clothing sponsor here, so he's got to rock the same T-shirt every week, right?
Yeah, if you get something that's really nice and comfortable, you kind of like, hey man, these new shirts.
I think
really nice.
It looks good, and you get kind of used to a certain look on the show. Yeah. Oh, good job.
I did go V-neck today.
T rocked the all elite cultivation look on Monday.
I did. Yeah, that was funny. Like the hat.
You look like you just left Wynnewood harvesting or whatever they do up there.
I may have. You never know. But no, I walked in. I had
Richard put you to work,
and the hat was sitting right here, and I'm like, it matches.
Yeah, it matches, man.
What do you guys? Did y'all see JT on that show? He looked good. Y'all need to take some cues from JT.
You gotta get the goatee thing going if you're gonna do that.
You gotta do this, and twist it.
Yeah, that some bitch looked good.
Yeah, he looked real. He looked real good, man.
Yeah.
Tommy Cunningham, we need some Stroud shirts. Stroud shirt. Wednesday.
I've got one. I'll rock it. I'll rock it on the show. I actually wore it just the other day. I was going to ask you guys, speaking of like, you've got to wear the same shirt, because you have sponsor obligations. How about Ken Block not being able to drive the Unicorn because of the Audi, that sponsorship? That surprised me a little bit, to be honest.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it, but it's like an old ass Mustang. I mean, like it's not even representative of like a model.
I'm surprised you didn't drop an Audi engine in it.
Yeah, I wonder how Tony Stewart is going to deal with that a little bit, because he's a Ford rep or sponsored deal on the NASCAR side, and then the NHRA deal. They haven't announced anything yet, but my gut says it's going to be a Dodge Mopar.
By all accounts, it's a Dodge Mopar deal,
and I think he's got other. I could be wrong, but the SRX deal, isn't that a Chevy deal or something? I mean, he's got these manufacturers all over the place. So maybe if you're Tony Stewart, you can just do whatever you want. He just gets away with it.
Well, I mean, he was wearing a Ford racing shirt on the cover of the magazine, right beside Leah, who's sponsored by Dodge. I thought it was a very interesting thing. But whenever Alex said that just didn't really. I don't know. I find it interesting because but it's the same thing with like NBA players that have shoe deals, right? Or whatever. I mean, if you're a Nike guy or an Air Jordan guy, like you can't be out wearing Yeezys or out wearing.
It looks like SRX does not have an actual manufacturer sponsor.
They don't.
No, but yeah, it's interesting to see. And I think it's interesting that Ken Block's he was there at Charlotte. I mean, we all saw him on TV. He's a bigger guy too. You would see, I mean, you would think like usually those guys like in these types of racing are smaller guys and they fit in all these different cars or whatever. But like that dude's
he's not
like
a little guy.
6'2" or 3" or something. I mean, he's a big guy. But that deal was awesome. I think it was pretty impressive, and to see Alex go out there and do that. Anyone that wants to say anything about that, I mean, the dude's driving a screw blown.
He got so much hate for the whole Street Outlaws thing, and it's so stupid. I mean, like this guy is a legitimate driver. Like, just drop it. I mean, it's so.
It is very tired.
And if you don't think so, then you don't know what you're talking about.
Right. And to drive it, and I mean, that deal was sketchy. He was spinning the tires all the way down through there and sideways. And honestly, the Unicorn was as well, even being 4-wheel drive.
Oh, it was moving a lot. And I mean, it was
whatever
annihilating the tires
1500
from the
horsepower.
get-go.
They were spinning all the way down through there. Shout out to both of them. They both did a hell of a job driving on that deal.
Yep.
I was going to ask you guys.
That's awesome.
I'm looking here. Like, you think about these people: Rob Dyrdek, Von Gittin, Travis Pastrana, Ken Block. These X game types, right? And some of these skate culture.
Travis
and whatnot.
Pastrana is super tall too.
He's 6'2".
Yeah.
Von Gittin 6'2". I find that interesting. But I really do hope
I
that,
just think these guys are smaller, but
I don't just really do hope that we can see some of those dudes, make this move. And I do believe that just being around it or being exposed to it, like, it was good for the sport of drag racing just for Ken Block to be in close proximity to the car that won the Sweet 16 or whatever, or won Lights Out. You know what I mean? Like, I think that that's a victory in and of itself. And the more opportunities that we can create for things like that to happen, there's no bad, in my opinion, that can come from that stuff. And I hope we get to see more and more and more of that. It was great whenever, seeing Ken Block at an NHRA race, seeing Tony Stewart at all these deals and multiple. I mean, you said there was a slew of NASCAR drivers that showed up in Charlotte. Mike, didn't you?
Yeah. Kyle Larson, Clint Boyer, Joey Logano, Ryan Newman, just to name a few.
Well, I'm hoping that we see some more of this stuff. Do you guys think, Daryl Jackson asks, we will see another nitrous car break into the 50s at the Snowbirds? Looking at the weather, I think it's possible. I really do.
Nitrous car in the 50s at Snowbirds? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think, will we see another one besides Halsey? I would not at all be surprised to see Tommy Franklin make that happen. I think Jay Cox is a threat to make that happen. What other nitrous cars are on that list? I can't remember.
Well, Jay doesn't have a ton of laps on that Musi combination either. And to go a 66 already down there tells me that
66 at 207.
He's in 207.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's in striking distance.
I mean, that's a hot rod, man. It's kind of crazy. It's more than kind of crazy. To see how far this deal has come in a relatively short amount of time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what other questions do you got for us? We'll dive through a few more of these before we get the shoots out going into the last 15, 16 minutes of the show. There was something I was going to ask you guys about, and I forgot. I wrote it down. Somebody mentioned having Clay Millican on next week. Kevin Stevenson. That's actually a great idea. We need to remember to make sure Clay's on the ride along Monday night because he was there helping Jeff Lutz. So he'll be able to give us a little bit of a, what was actually happening versus what we're seeing on TV. I don't know about you guys, but I felt like we did a better job watching the show Monday night. I felt like I got to watch some of the show.
Pat was super stressed out about how are we going to watch the show while we're doing this. I mean, he asked me 15 times how this was going to work. And I said, at the end, Pat, you may not get to watch the show like this to the same level of intensity that you normally would, but you just have to watch it later.
Man, I gotta get my VCR out and
right.
record this.
Yeah, he broke out the VCR. But yeah, I mean, I think we did. I think having people, the people that are going rounds to where we can pop in and talk about what was happening each round and kind of keep up with it helps us follow along. Do you agree? So again, next week having Clay on there, that'll probably help.
What do you guys think of
this year too,
what do you think of Alex saying that his exposure or I don't know what exactly he was referencing or what metrics he's using, but his exposure being up 600% versus the exposure he was receiving for Pro Stock Pro Mod. Did that surprise you guys that it's that big of a jump? I believe those are some metrics some of his sponsors are using. What was your take on that?
It didn't surprise me, but it kind of hurts to hear it. That's how I felt. Yeah. I kind of cringed. I wasn't on camera at that moment, but I was cringing a little bit. I mean, we all know that. And I think Alex is smart for someone that's so marketing driven and so intense on that whole deal. It makes all the sense in the world for him to be on the fuel platform. But I mean, it probably is a 600% increase in exposure.
I bet it is, especially fan base wise. I think, maybe not. Maybe not for the diehards as much, but yeah, I think fan base looking in, of course it would be, because I mean that's your headliners, right?
Yeah, dude. What do you think about one of the things that Alex pointed out right off the bat was just how expensive it is, right? And the exposure, what he's able to get from sponsors doesn't necessarily line up with what it costs to race Top Fuel. Does that not beg the question of why not get one of the lesser expensive classes on TV? You know what I'm saying? Could an argument not be made to say hey, if we can't provide the level of exposure required to run a $2, $3, $4 million Top Fuel operation, would we not be wise to get one of these other categories in that massively increased level of exposure, be it pro stock or pro mod, something that's a little bit more of affordable? You know what I mean? Like to bridge that gap or narrow the gap. I mean, the same thing will happen. I mean, we've joked about that in the past, that it's a double-edged sword.
Your headliners and,
it's such a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
it really is, because it's like I feel like NHRA almost has to serve as the gatekeeper to the TV, and it's like you have to get to this level, and you've got to run pretty much this type of car to get on TV. And the moment that they don't do that and they give it to a class that's less expensive to run, you're going to lose your whole Top Fuel and funny car contingent.
Yeah,
because they're going to go, why are we doing this? We're going to go to one of these other classes. So it's kind of on like NHRA to maintain the value of it.
It's like saying that the truck series is, the same as, in NASCAR. I mean, you see what I'm saying? I mean,
yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, that is a good example, JT. It'd be like, this weekend, we're not showing any of the Cup stuff. We're only going to show you the truck guys on Sunday afternoon or whatever. And it would change everything.
Well, I mean, and that's part of me thinks that I've actually suggested that in the past, that like maybe the play is to just treat pro stock like your truck series or whatever, you know what I mean? And have it run on Saturday night instead of Sunday, make it its own thing. You know what I mean?
I actually like that idea.
Going into
I actually like that idea.
I think that's what that is.
And that gives a show for Saturday.
Yeah.
For the fans.
Saturday needs a show. Because one of the things I think the Street Outlaws No Prep Kings has done that's smart is that Friday night race, that team attack deal. I was so surprised how many people hung out till late at night at the Motorplex because they wanted to see who was going to win this race. There was actually a race unfolding. Not only were they seeing the invitational guys make test passes or grudge passes, whatever they want to say, but they were also seeing an actual race unfold. You don't have that. And if you could have some sort of race actually take place on Saturday night or whatever at an NHRA national event, I don't know. I think an argument could be made for that. I think a case could be made from that. I'm sure the racers wouldn't like the notion of being, the pro stock guys might not like the idea of, being put into a lesser category.
It'd be hard to go from where you are now to to but it's kind of like you got to start somewhere
and maybe do it with Pro Mod. I think Pro Mod would be the place to do it.
Yeah, Pro Mod would be a great experiment with that. You got to start somewhere. It's kind of like you've just opened the floodgates and let everyone in with the same expectations that they're going to get the same exposure. But if you just set these ground rules and the expectations initially, like NASCAR did, whatever 20, 30 years ago, whenever the truck series came about, or the Busch series, or I always call it Busch series. I don't know what it is now. Xfinity series. Called it too. Xfinity series. Those guys know what they're getting into. So you kind of build the program around that. They know they're going to be on Friday night or whatever the case may be, or Saturday afternoon instead of the prime show. Whereas the pro stock guys are like, we think we're going to be on there at the same time and we're going to get the same exposure. Then they don't show anything, or I lost first round and they're only showing the semis, and it's sort of a bait switch type of deal.
It'd be smart though, because you'd be the main show for that night.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think it's a great idea.
Well, I mean, and they've already pretty much demonstrated that they're not going to let Pro Mod be part of the Camping World Series, right? I mean, there's no better example. If you go to media.nhra.com or whatever and log into the media site, there's pictures of Top Fuel guys, there's pictures of funny car guys, there's pictures of pro stock guys and pro stock motorcycle guys, but there is Pro Mod's not included. You look at the Winner's Circle celebration on Sunday afternoon at Pomona. Well, I mean, Pomona is a bad example because they didn't run Pro Mod, but you guys get my drift. There are 4 classes on that stage, and they've made it known, no matter what they say about Pro Mod being a pro category and it's part of the show and whatnot, it's not. Well, if it's not, why not just go all in on that?
Yeah. Gosh, it's escaped me. Brainerd. Sorry, I was thinking Bradenton. Had that on the brain. Yeah. Brainerd. They only had Top Fuel and Funny Car there, no pro stock, and they had Pro Mod. They didn't have. I talked about this a lot. It looks so awkward, like the stage, the truck ride back up to the stage and everything. Just 2 guys. Yeah. Even though we've got
room, man.
There's seats in the truck
over here.
That's so stupid.
Who won Brainerd? Was it Stevie? I can't
Who did
remember
win
who won
Brainerd?
it.
I think Jose Gonzalez won.
Jose Gonzalez. Okay. Maybe raced Steve in the finals or something, or maybe we talked to Stevie about Brainerd, about that whole deal. But it's like, throw them in there.
Maybe
Let them have
Stevie
the
did.
stage at this one time. No, it's just two guys.
Yeah, I was totally blown away by that, and there's probably no better
Brainerd
example,
did.
because
Yeah,
there was a legit opportunity for NHRA to go, you know what? Let's lump him in. Let's throw him in there.
Jose won.
And I've been kind of begging for that for a long time, because I know how much that would be good for like the
you do it
ego
once
of those
but
guys.
In
Yes,
NHRA, you do it once. Oh, and then it's, hey, you let him on the stage at Brainerd. Why can't we do this at Charlotte?
Stevie got to be up on the stage with everybody
Yeah.
else or whoever. So I totally understand that it's an unwinnable thing, I suppose. But there does seem to be, because to our, what we were talking about early in the show, something needs to happen. NHRA Pro Mod is what's the word?
Don't you like on the results how Pro Mod's second from last when you look it up on NHRA?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, there's
really,
clearly an opportunity there to do something different.
You go down through here, Super Stock Eliminators.
There's clearly an opportunity.
Gas,
Scott Palmer.
Yeah, Scott Palmer.
Dragster, and then Pro Mod. Yeah.
Went to No Prep Kings at the Motorplex. I saw him there. He had his 63 Corvette there. Sam and Jim Hughes, I think it was like Scott's first time ever running an automatic. They had a torque converter in the car. Sam and Jim Hughes have something figured out. T-shirt lines for all the racers were unreal and a great race. I'm hooked. Man, I honestly feel much the same way about it. That was the first time that I'd been to a No Prep Kings race in a long time. And from the production of the show, the crowd interaction, the way they present the stars, there's such an effort, such a focus on the men and women behind the wheel of these cars that's something that really speaks to me personally. But I don't know.
Scott Palmer would be good in BK.
Yes, he is a match made in heaven. Scott said he put the clutch back in it. Thank God for that. Yes, Saturday needs a show.
Brother.
I do think.
There you go, JT. Drink.
What's that? Oh,
we got it as God intended.
Oh, as God intended. Yeah, I don't have a drink today.
Yeah, actually, you actually owe a few drinks. I was taking them.
Wes, are you not drinking until PRI?
No. I have been doing significant amount of cardio. I can't do much working out because of this herniated disc deal. And I do get good news. My spine surgeon says that we can wait a little longer or wait for surgery, which I'm excited about. But I got to tell you guys, I'm genuinely terrified of walking around that trade show. I went on a field trip with my daughter yesterday, and we walked 8,000 steps. And when I got home last night, I felt like I got beat with a baseball bat. It was horrible.
That can be arranged as well.
Yeah. This can be arranged as well. Clifford Hurd says, seems like the conversation always swings toward how NPK is doing things right. Man, in a lot of ways, I do think they're doing a lot of stuff right. But I got to say, having Lohnes on here, I don't feel too bad about the future of the NHRA. There wasn't that long ago that I was genuinely concerned. I remember having a conversation at the NHRA Mile High Nationals in Denver, Colorado. I'm going to say Bradenton too. Bradenton. I remember looking at Nitro Alley, right? And it was 27 Don Schumacher Racing trailers and all the Coletta Motorsports trailers and all the John Force rigs. And I was having a powwow with a guy, a pretty high-ranking dude, and he looked at me and he says, how long do you think it's going to be like this? How long do you think that can last? And in that moment, I go, wow, I do have some concerns. We hear it all the time, right? What happens if something happens to Don Schumacher? What happens if something happens to Connie Coletta? What happens if something happens to John Force, right? It's going to take away a quarter of the field. Well, you know what? The world, it's happening for us, and it's going to leave the sport in a better place, to be honest. Brian made a great point today.
Yeah, Brian just does such a great job, kind of, one paragraph, sum it up, some of the stuff we've been talking about over the course of several weeks. I do believe this is going to be an exciting season. This is going to be the best season of NHRA racing that we've had in 10 or 15 years. Just because of the splintering of it, it needed to be splintered. It had gotten out of control.
The usual suspect thing had totally worn me out.
Yeah, and
last year was really bad.
Looking
at Don Schumacher Racing, winning every funny car race that happened in 2020, really to me was just a picture of oh my gosh, we need some fresh faces in here, and we got a taste of that across the board in 2021, and it's going to be that times probably 20 in 2022.
Well,
it's
and having
exciting.
Brian, I think Brian at the helm, being the voice of NHRA, so to speak, is a huge thing too. Because like he talked about, he was being more open with some of the rumors and some of the things. We've got to have that also. We've got to have someone at NHRA that's willing to go out on a limb and sort of change the paradigm and not be afraid, not continue down the same path. So we've known Brian for as long as we've known each other, and he's always had that same deal.
Got tasered while talking to him. Do you remember that?
What? Oh, I do remember that.
Yeah, I was talking to him. Yeah, and we had a bunch of money. Like who would take this taser? You don't get shocked. And
when was this?
And I kept saying, I'll do it for that money. It was that
Lights Out?
No,
or Sweet 16?
Sweet 16.
Yeah.
And
that makes sense.
We were talking, doing a video. I've got it on video, right when I got zapped. And I got zapped.
Who was it that tased you?
I can't remember. And then he was like, shocking development. And he just played it off just like that. It's shocking.
Yeah, but we have to have that. We have to at all levels. So we've got some of the shakeup going on in the teams themselves. And now maybe a little bit of a shakeup in how they're presenting it. And they're looking at the Netflix deal. They're looking at the reality show. They're looking at the video game.
I'm a fan of Formula One now from watching that show. Like I was so bummed. You know, you get that depression, you know, when you binge something for so long and you get to the last episode and you're like,
it's over.
Shit, it's over. And what am I going to do now? You know?
I was going to show you guys the screen grab that I thought was, and it literally, it just backs you up on what you just said. Shit, I can't find it. Whatever. There was a thing that came out just the other day. Somebody posted on Twitter that Formula One, their fan base, like the average age is 32. Decidedly younger than the NFL, decidedly younger than NBA, decidedly younger than MLB. I mean, they've got the youngest fan base of like major sports.
A lot of young drivers. A lot of those drivers are like 21. So you got that. And again,
I point to Netflix.
The Netflix
1,000% Netflix did it. The whole thing. They said Liberty Media or whatever the name of the parent company is, Liberty something. They are a digital first approach is clearly paying dividends. But I think it goes even further than that. Like they do a lot of things really well. I mean, I get a daily email from Formula One. Their website's kick ass. Everything they do on social media is solid. But that Netflix show is the difference maker. You cannot tell me otherwise.
They're looking at that for sure. I heard it straight from the
horse's
been
big
mouth.
Though, even before that.
NHRA is. I'm sorry.
It's so well done and it's so high class. I mean, those.
Yeah, Formula One's big. I mean, it's
God,
outside of the U.S. It's the number one motorsport. It's in Europe and Asia and the Middle East. I mean, it's the deal. But the ground that they've made up in the U.S. is due to the Netflix show. That deal in Texas.
That is, I agree.
All that huge crowd and the whole deal. They're exposing themselves in a good way to the U.S. market, and they knew they needed to. And what's the best way to do that? A Netflix documentary.
Unfortunately, put your stuff on a television, and we'll watch it. Right? Americans like, oh no, did you see what's on TV?
The movie Driven with Sylvester Stallone is probably what did it for America. Did you never see it?
No. What was that? What was the one what was the one about?
Rush.
Rush with Niki Lauda and
you got to watch Driven now.
Yeah,
I mean,
that one was
Sylvester
good.
Stallone, man, he's
Rush
picking
was
up
good.
quarters with his back tires. Oh, you never seen it?
Yeah, I've seen that, but I don't think that
I
did
have
it.
not.
Rush was a good one, and that
I
was like
joking. I was
Rush
joking,
was a
Mike.
good one.
It wasn't very good.
Who the F was up at 2 a.m.? Mike and I have gotten up early in the morning to watch
I
the
don't know why we
F1
do
races on Sunday morning, and we stayed up one night. I can't remember where we were at. Maybe
it had
Gainesville.
been a late night, and we decided
It had been a late night, and we decided just to stay up and watch the Formula One race. It was at Gainesville. It was definitely at Gainesville. We'd stayed up late one night, and we ended up watching that whole race. It's fun to follow. I like watching it just for the opportunity to learn stuff or glean little I don't know, awesome ideas and just rip them off blatantly. That's the funnest thing to do, to be honest. But
stuff that we think that drag racing should be doing.
Yeah, stuff that we think drag racing should be doing.
We're going to get some of that from Tony Stewart too.
I think so too. And I was glad that Brian, I didn't know if anybody else had noticed like how big of a deal they'd made out of a press conference. I mean, they got a step and repeat up behind them. They've got an MC. They've got all sorts
of. It was
of
a production.
You were there.
Yeah.
I was glad to hear that somebody noticed.
It like burnt the back of my neck. I mean, they couldn't even see or look straight ahead because the lights were so bright.
Did you feel like when you were there, Mike, at the press conference, was that what you took away from it? That NHRA noticed like, oh shit, there's a whole other level of how this stuff's done.
Well, Glenn Cromwell was there. Ned Walliser was there. Josh Peterson was there. Joshua Young, Jeffrey Young was there. Yeah, I'm sorry. A lot of the NHRA execs were there. All the Speedway Motorsports people were there. Anybody, all the people that really are the engine of NHRA and of NHRA drag racing, from the tracks to the ownership to the sanctioning body themselves, they were there. So it was a cool show of support from that group to Tony Stewart and from Tony Stewart to the NHRA, as like, hey, just because you're NHRA and you guys don't normally do this, I'm just going to mail this in and send in a press release or whatever. He did the full deal. So I just kind of thought that was a cool moment.
I think we will look at it as a turning point, right? I mean, I think that there was a great example provided to the rest of us as to this is how it's done in the big leagues. And man, things are what you make of them. I say it all the time, whether you've got a sponsor that's giving you $500 or a sponsor that's giving you $500,000, you got to treat them like a big deal. You've got to, because that's what it's going to be. If you act like it's a big deal and you speak like it's a big deal and you treat it like a big deal, by God, it's going to be a big deal. It's not like it's not all about speaking things into existence necessarily, but man, how you treat things really makes a huge difference.
That's the thing you have in your control. Is speaking it into existence and treating it like a big deal. If you don't, how can you expect anyone else to? And you're not going to get the ball rolling.
Absolutely, guys. And on that note, let's call it a day. We are literally days away, ladies and gentlemen. I want to remind everybody, next week our show will be broadcast Thursday morning, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Eastern time. So those of you watching along Central, even earlier, right? 9 a.m. start time, a little bit of a different slot for us. We'll be broadcasting live from the PRI show in Indianapolis, Indiana. We're super excited about it. I hope you're headed to the convention center the same time we are. Thursday morning from the PRI headquarters main stage. We will be then having, let me get all of these straight, right? Friday at 11 a.m. to noon will be the first annual Drag Illustrated Pro Mod Summit. If you care about pro modified drag racing, if you care about the fast door slammer racing, I encourage you to be there. Opportunity for your voice to be heard, for you to network with other people that are part of that particular eliminator and the events that host it. At 1:30 p.m. Friday in the Media Center at the PRI show, we'll be unveiling our DI 30 under 30 class of 2021. We're very, very excited about this. Come support these young people. It is so, so, so important that we pat these young guys and gals on the back and encourage them on their journey, their hopefully career in the sport of drag racing. This is a sport that is rough and tumble. You take a lot of L's in the sport of drag racing. So it's important that ourselves here at Drag Illustrated, all of our sponsors that have supported the 30 under 30, Redline, Stroud, Elite HP, Sand Haulers of America, Flow Racing. It's important that every one of these, all of us, support these young folks and encourage them as they head off into the future. So thank you guys all for being a part of this. We'll see you Monday night for the next episode of the Drag Illustrated Ride Along. Yep, go ahead. This ought to be good.
If I could build any car and do any type of racing, what would it be? And it would actually be a stadium truck.
Really?
Yeah.
Would you do it like the Baja 1000 stuff, or would you do the deal?
Stadium, probably. Yeah.
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 Mike, what about you?
I thought you bought Shadow.
Shit. I like jumping shit. No, my second would be probably like a no prep car right now.
I thought you
big tire,
Shadow
no prep
2.0.
car. Be specific.
What's that?
Big tire.
Yeah.
Be specific.
Yeah.
Mike, what about you?
Like right now or at any point in history? I mean, I don't know.
Right now.
I'd build a nitrous Pro Mod and go run NHRA Pro Mod.
I mean, I could have guessed that. I think you're gonna surprise me with something.
Or go run No Prep Kings. One of those two.
Oh,
I think if I could do any type of racing right now, The problem with an Olds Cutlass is that the hood is low. You can't get a big, like a tall deck, like a big motor under the hood.
Get a
really
big ugly cowl on that thing.
You know, and it will look horrible. The Cutlass will lose all of its body lines if we try. And it's hard to get a big tire on those cars. Like you can't get no Top Fuel tire on one of those, right?
What are you trying to go? Nitrous?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like if I went nitrous no prep racing, right, I would probably do it with an Olds Cutlass. I think that'd be the play. If I had to go build a race car to race right now, I would build probably one of these late. God, it's so lame, right? I'd build a brand new Camaro, a ZL1 Camaro, but I don't know that it would have wouldn't have a Pro Charger deal in it. It'd have a massive nitrous engine in it. You know, that's probably what I would build. And I also want a super stock pulling tractor. Pretty big on that. But I just want to drive it around. I don't really want to pull it. I just want to drive it around like to work. You know what I mean? Like at a stoplight with the hand, like,
yeah.
Oh,
you need your garden plowed?
Yeah.
You need your garden plowed? I'll get the tractor.
I got a John Deere ready to rock right now. I just think they look awesome. I literally went on a hayride yesterday, and the lady driving the tractor was just like, John Deere, they're good looking tractors.
Where were you on a hayride?
Because I wanted to be on a hayride.
Oh, because you went to that, field trip.
I went on a field trip with my daughter. It was actually an awesome time. We had a blast, man. We went to this place called Mainstay Farms. It's like an 80-acre Christmas tree farm with all sorts of other stuff. It's like a farm, a theme park. Your kids would love it, Mike, and JT, yours too. If you ever bring them down here, Mike brings his kids down here quite a bit. But
did you come home with a tree?
No, we already got a fake one. We're a fake tree group.
Fake tree or real tree?
Fake tree.
Yeah, fake across the board.
Yeah.
Real
However,
expensive this year,
hear this out. They had an 8-footer, so you know, for $167, and these are hybrids. Are you aware of this? These hybrid Christmas trees, they're man-made. They don't come from nature. They cross-pollinate. I'm using words that I don't know what they mean. They like cross-pollinate 2 different types of tree, and it's like some customized Arizona blue spruce or something. They kind of have a blue hue to them, but they don't produce, like they don't have seedlings. They don't drop needles. It is very interesting. It was
so what's the advantage? I mean, it just is like
they don't have no allergens. Oh, okay. No allergens. And Alicia's watching. I can't remember exactly what they were called, but I think we will get one moving forward. I think that this will be the direction we go. Ladies and gentlemen, I would look into hybrid Christmas trees. Definitely looks like a winner.
Of fake Christmas trees. Like, I guess my wife's always hid that from me. But I was looking at a Black Friday sales. I'm like, $600 for one of those.
Yeah, I think our tree was like $800.
And I'm like, wait, this one's $800.
Of course, yours was, Mike.
I'm like, what?
But you keep it for at least
those things don't last that long.
No, they do now with the new LED lights. Whatever. The old deals, but like
get a couple of mutts like mine.
You just throw that bad boy up there, plug it in, it's ready to roll for like 10 years.
We don't have LED lights on ours. Ours does it? I don't think so.
Not want anything without.
Okay, real quick question:
LED lights,
big bulbs or small bulbs on your Christmas lights?
Small.
Big. Went big and went old school. I got old school, the big bulbs.
Yeah,
you know, say no more. Our house, you can see it from space right now.
Make sure your insurance is paid up. I'll feel bad if something happens now.
Yeah, you will feel bad. You will feel bad if something happens. I hope nothing happens to our house. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys so much for being a part of this. All of our sponsors, everybody that supports this show, Mike, JT, thank you for the time. Brian Lohnes, Alex Laughlin, thank you guys for being a part of this deal. We'll see you guys Monday. And then again, of course, at the PRI show, DI After Hours, powered by Titan Racing Engines. Log on to dragillustrated.com/tickets. And get yours now because we will sell out. We've already sold out of VIP tables, and I think we're at like 70 or 80% of total ticket capacity.
Only a few remain. This ain't going to be, you got to get your ticket now. If you don't get your ticket before the show, I'm going to say you're not getting in.
That's a fact, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you guys so much. Guys, I'll see you next time.
Later.
Thanks, y'all.